The little girl wondered when her life had taken a wrong turn, when she had been born an orphan, or when the boss she swore to dedicate her life to betrayed her and tried to kill her. Maybe. When did the wish she made in her final moments come true? And I was reborn as a child of noble birth, just before my death. The little girl was in great pain. Servants were around her, asking for a doctor. The girl suffered terrible pain. Her whole body was burning. It was terrible torment for the little one girls. But suddenly, two adult hands grasped the little hand. The girl said that here. This one girl was her beloved nanny, asked her to hold on young Miss Moore. A little, the doctor will be here soon. Through a crowd of servants girl, I saw a man. The man was grinning angrily. Other situations were not very pleasant, but the man said, if girl is going to let him die, then we'll do it as worthy. When I realized that I was reborn in the family, a person who are killed. The man complained peer, which annoying small girl. Girl, honestly. Speaking, I asked myself a question. What this is for life like this? Young girl. She was walking down the corridor. Her name was Miss Erin. Girl. Someone called, and she turned around to hear the call. This was her. She as a caring servant was worried. The woman said that young a lady isn't worth that much move. The girl asked why? She said that she was no longer in pain. The maid's name was Marie. Young lady was too active. She said about her maid, what now? Maybe calmly, here it is run everywhere. The maid came up closer to your own young miss and said that knows that she is feeling better. But today, Mary just tried to relax in the room girls. If something will go wrong, and the young miss again, the temperature will rise. Her Marie's favorite maid can kick out from the house of Barano. Young the lady was of course upset this. Small, the girl couldn't believe that Barano. No matter how many times she heard it, this can't possibly relate to this, get used to generic estate. Burunov was wonderful. It as if sparkled from its beauty and purity. This was place where she worked as a secretary for 10 years. The place where all the intrigues began, Harvenica Burano. Even after Rebirth, the girl turned out to be too tightly related to this place. Seeing that the portrait of the late Duke was still hanging Harvey Nick, maybe he hasn't inherited the title yet. It seems she's back to the time when got a job as a secretary. The late Duke's name was Raphael Burano. His 3 sons were all they problematic. None of them had inclination towards business. One was crowded ambitions, honor, and success sewing house. Second abandoned his family to marry a woman low origin. Then he died 2 years ago. And the third one is a recluse. Hermit, whom rarely noticed even within estates. And at that time, Raphael was very hard thrown out successor. At the end, finally, Harvanik was the only one who was able to achieve success, so he inherited the title. How only he was convinced that inherit the title of Duke, he began secretly to commit all sorts atrocities. Among these, he entrusted his secretary with laundering the crimes money and corruption young woman. I was ready to do whatever he ordered. But the girl I put in all I had, working without rest at the end in the end. He just took all the fruits for himself, her labor, and killed her. For 10 years of working as his secretary, the girl I saw how countless the number of people who died at his hands. And yet I never thought that will die as well as they. She was a person raised with support families, Barano. That's why she believed that if she will dedicate myself this family, who knew her value, then someday will rewarded because worked tirelessly. The girl thought that her value funny. At the ends, she was total only disposable instrument against the general background. Her previous life ended at a resort with a sea view. This was quiet place, and she thought that will be able to enjoy peace. But this also meant that even if she screamed and called for help, nobody I wouldn't have heard her. That did this ideal a place for murder. She prayed for life, even if it meant humility. But no one I didn't feel sorry for her. In the end, after all, she met her lonely end. She didn't have close ones, friends, lover, warm families, even at home, where there was a chance to return. There was no. She felt like her body gradually. It's cooling down. Well, she chose a bad person as her boss, so she can't complain after all. This her own fault. The daughter was thinking about her tragic death and past life. As from this, her Marie tore off. To the maid was joyfully see that young miss got better. Honestly speaking, she prayed all night that her madame was fine. Although, of course, she is not sure that this it had some effect. The girl didn't expect it. Hear such kind words, by grieved. This almost brought her to tears. Marie said that today will bring to the girl yummy treats, just like the old days, kind times. Marie asked if there was something specific. What did she want? They have cookies, raspberries, and milk. The girl wondered why this all seemed so familiar. Sounds. Wait! Really? That's what it's about, thinks Aaron? The same menu as for the servants of the House of Barano, as a snack after food. How whatever it was, the girl can't take away snacks from working people. So she said that he doesn't want to. Marie said that what girl told her when wants to eat. The maid has always watched that the girl would have was a little food. At the right moment, Marie asked if she was hungry. Young woman. Aaron. Girl. I heard that she was treated badly. It seemed like there were rumors in the family truth. Aaron Barano, the only one, D.H. Colony Barano, one of 3 sons, the late Duke. Colony was the one who abandoned his family in order to marry as a woman. They say that Aaron never treated properly, as to the Duke's granddaughter, due to bad relations between Colony and the family. Of course, after the death of her parents, she joined the Duke's estate. Marie asked for the girl rest before dinner. She will prepare it for her. Marie her, the maid in charge of her. She doesn't look like the granddaughter I was talking about care properly. The room used as a warehouse. Eating snacks for the servants. Girl more for a long time I was thinking, in memory. Got in appearance angry Harvenica. Aaron was adopted Harvenick in the year when young woman got a job. And by the time she arrived at this mansion, she had already died in an accident case. They said that this was fall, but none of Harvenick's servants truly believed this stories. Even though his niece was dying of fever, he got angry, saying he didn't want to be bothered. He apparently adopted her just to gain favor chapters' families. But she was useless, so it must be to be apparently gave him pleasure inconvenience. It's obvious that Harvenick took care of Aaron. Poor thing. Girl. If things continue like this, her will adopt Harvenick, without giving the Opportunity Act. And this human again, her will kill, just like her last one life, without giving any the slightest chance of salvation in his life. This time she doesn't want to. If I'm going to die, I must die. Be some reason why she was reborn as Aaron. This maybe be divine message ordering her atone sins her last life. This life doesn't promise either be easy, but if that's right, she just needs it do what she always did. Fight ISO with all my strength to survive. So, first of all, she will never allow it Harvenick adopt her. Young woman, I was walking through the library estates Barano. She was almost, I'm sure, that this was somewhere here. Library is located in a separate building next to the estate. And she enough big, makes you really feel power and wealth, the Duke's family. She also filled multitude useful information. The reason why the girl came to this library, found it. I realized that for a thorough developed by her last at night plan, she will need some knowledge about magical science. This is a field of research that scientifically studies magical power. In particular, she focused on creation magical tools using magical stones as raw materials. Thanks to your own research, magic scientists invented set tools that help in everyday life. By using this, allowing the Empire Edener develop rich civilization. However, magical tools require significant quantities, magical stones, but their prey constantly is decreasing. To such a degrees that they said, if you don't have money, you shouldn't even consider studying magical science, because this very inexpensive area of research. Of course, family Barano is famous aristocratic family, so money milking them is not a problem. Moreover, magical science is the only thing interested the man whom she is considering. How potential father. And for now, the girl was wandering and thinking about her plan. She wandered into someone else's cabinet. I was horrified. Damn. Take this. All the books, documents, all of this scattered. Girl walked up to the table. The girl took the document and began to examine it. Imperial Magical Science. Unified Formula. This is all research materials related to magic science. Stop. Really? This? Suddenly in front of the girl, a man appeared. Was Geoffrey, the owner of this table and documents. Geoffrey Barano, 3rd Duke Rayfern's son. He is Strange the Explorer that everyone calls crazy magical scientists. He doesn't communicate with anyone in the main estate. He spends all his time locked in his laboratories, completely absorbed your own research. In other words, if you possess knowledge of magic science, you can, to attract his attention. Of course he does himself, as if he had something missing in his head, screw, or even two, and definitely a little eccentric. But hey, he doesn't look like the one at all. Capable of murder as Harvenick, right? The girl greeted him. The man, of course, became square and ordered young. The girl put everything back in place she holds in hands. The girl began to apologize, but Jeffrey said she stopped hanging around and got lost. Aaron got it. Jeffrey very jealously treats his own things. And not only that, I forgot about it. So her and was also caught doing the same thing. She touched his research diary. She tried get close to Jeffrey so he'll consider adopting her. She's not very fine, understands magic science, but she had dealing with the future magical technologies earlier. Therefore, she thought that Jeffrey maybe become interested by her. Oh my God, forget about interest. Aaron is lucky that she wasn't kicked out. And on top of that, although while we were there, written prime numbers and symbols, that formula in the diary, that was definitely it. Magical computing formula ELFRO, isn't it? ELFRO is magical computational formula that before degeneration was considered revolutionary in the field of magical science. With the help of this formulas, we're able to create magical tools using insignificant quantity magical stones. Although the formula was so complex and difficult that her commercialization took many time, in the end, without ELFRO, it was not created not a single magical instrument. But really? This formula was not originally developed in the laboratory Harvenica. Having become the heir, Harvanic began to wind down family business one after another. Despite the fact that almost everything his family state was wasted, I was able to stay afloat exclusively thanks to ELFRO. In the past life, Harvenick incredibly was proud of the fact that family Burano extracted benefit from his discovery. But the fact that the basis of that formula is in the hands of Jeffrey, maybe to be, Harvenick stole research, Jeffrey? She wants say to him, what will the formula become? Incredible important invention in just a few years. That's why he can't let Harvenick take her. But Jeffrey probably doesn't care about such things, as long as he can study your own research, right? Yeah, if he cared, he would come. Would be in her office and arranged in the past. Her life is hell. The man was angry and throwing things around things, because something didn't work out and everything was wrong. Girl, attentively, I watched Jeffrey and didn't understand what was happening. She thought that researcher stuck on the formula. Girl decided approach him. She apologized that bothers him during work, but she needs something say. Young girl, she held the document up to him, and he simply snatched it from Aaron's small hands. She again apologized and told him that Jeffrey, I made a mistake in my calculations here. Of course he couldn't calmly accept a remark from a little girl, and asked what kind of nonsense she carries. Girl, slightly I was scared. He looked very angry, but why? She didn't steal anything, and she did not interrupt his research. Aaron was just trying help, that's all. Now it's a girl. A little I got angry at such impudence. She squeezed out from herself and repeated to the man that his calculations are incorrect. How at least 3 places? Jeffrey, very. I was surprised by this behavior and did not understand at all what is happening. Girl, I realized that she can't to be around him anymore and ran away. Whew, what is she talking about? I was just thinking. I blurted something like that out without thinking about the consequences. Necessary, forget about adoption. She probably made worse impression in his life. Oh, what now? Do. Considering the question of adoption, maybe she should just run away. Or maybe to begin search some distant relatives. But now she can't do anything, she just needs to do it, apologize. Girl decided that it's worth going to the library and taking the books I missed yesterday. And if that happens, Jeffrey, she just has to say that, very apologizes. How only girl opened the door, a man's hand blocked her way. This was Jeffrey. He was very angry. He shoved the sheet of paper in the girl's face and asked if these were the 3 places he had spoken about. Did she say? The whole sheet was underlined. Girl, I was very surprised by such a visit, and in general by what was happening. She awkwardly said that yes, it is exactly those mistakes. She was still surprised. He wouldn't have come all this way, only to make sure of that, won't you? When Aaron said that those are the mistakes, Jeffrey, corrected glasses, and said that knew this. But why? He asked from what this is when the girl started to push my nose into his research. The girl began to deny and said that yesterday, for the first time, familiarized myself with the research men. He asked how should he do this believe? Jeffrey asked what she wants. Say that discovered these mistakes in such a short period of time? This is not the kind of research that you can tell just by looking at it. He must be B. Thought that she, for a long time I was looking at it, since it was so fast calculated all. The girl said that, fine thinks. Jeff asked, does he know? Lee-She equations? Even high-level formulas used in magic techniques? Aaron said that even those who contain functions, addition and subtraction. Of course, Jeffrey counted this suspicious. Girl, I suggested that if he doesn't believe, then maybe calmly her check. To a man I liked it this an idea, and he thought about it. How is this to do? Jeffrey planted the girl at the table and put a stack of documents. He said that I checked all of this. Aaron thought that even if she was reborn, but she did not stop understanding magical formulas. The girl took out the first piece of paper and put it down. She began pointing at each one. Error. On the next one piece of paper similarly, but with the other one everything was fine. Jeff was very surprised. This was unbelievable. She calculated, is it all in the mind? Table was fully filled with papers that were checked Aaron. Jeff was just as surprised. Speed, small lady. In the past life, young woman was one from the most gifted in the orphanage, which brought her the patronage of the family Burano. She always was confident in her capabilities, work with numbers. She maybe decide calculations in magical sciences, even with closed with eyes. With such speed, she could fulfill calculations, while Jeffrey checks, and that means that he will finally be able to understand why he always endures failure. With her, could. The man clearly put I for skill this small girls and wanted them take advantage of. He asked, how old is she? Girl? Replied that 7. What I was finally finished off by surprised Jeffrey. He said that. She, of course, still is too young, but doesn't think so. This has meaning. The man told the girl to come to him that afternoon. She was surprised by the invitation. She asked if she needed to go to the library. Jeffrey said no, she should go to the lab. Aaron asked why the lab. He replied, because from now on she would be his assistant. The girl couldn't believe his words. Of course, she wanted to get Jeffrey's attention. But being his assistant, it felt more like a business relationship than a family one. Jeff said he needed to teach her something, so she shouldn't forget to come. He'd go back there to get ready. The man was about to leave, but apparently forgot something, so he turned to the girl. He put his hands in his pockets and asked the little girl what she liked. She didn't understand. Jeffrey clarified that he meant treats. She must have a favorite treat. Aaron paused. She loved all kinds of tasty treats, but they were usually too expensive to eat often. The girl decided on something ordinary and said she liked cookies. The man asked her if she really liked these sweets. The girl said yes, because they were very tasty. Jeffrey noticed the insincerity in the girl's eyes, but remained silent about this reason. As he left, Jeff said they'd see each other in a little while. The girl felt she had no choice but to come. Oh, why is she so nervous? He says he'll make her his assistant. It's not as bad as the worst-case scenario she imagined, but still, what if she works endlessly like in her past life? In the end, Harvanik will simply adopt her, only so she can die. No, don't lose heart just yet. Right now, her only option is Jeffrey. If that's the case, then this time she's sure to win Jeffrey's favor. The girl got ready and arrived at the lab sometime later. Jeffrey told her to come in, and she did. His laboratory looked amazing, and its size was simply astounding. The girl stood in a stupor and examined every corner and every object in the laboratory. She thought it was surprisingly clean for someone who spent all her time here. Jeff called her and showed her where her place was. It was a cute little table, just right for her. The head butler had prepared it in a hurry, so Jeffrey would soon bring in a larger one. Now, Jeffrey asked me to just wait here for a bit while he finished what he started. He also said that while she was waiting, she could eat something that he brought her and left on the table. He brought the girl cookies, or so she thought. She thanked him for the treat, but when the girl opened the lid of the plate, what she saw there was not a cookie at all. It was a delicious cake with whipped cream and strawberries. The girl was very happy. Could she really eat it? The girl thanked Jeffrey again for the treat. Erin started eating. It was incredibly delicious. She'd probably never tasted anything like it. It was the perfect combination of cream and strawberries. This is the best thing she has ever eaten in her life. And Jeffrey suddenly seems different now. Who said he was sullen and scary? Now he's simply charming. Jeffrey noticed the little girl staring at him openly and lost in her thoughts. So he interrupted her and asked if she was finished. The girl apologized. It was just the best thing she had ever tasted. The man turned away and told her to wipe her mouth before saying anything. Erin glanced at her reflection in the shining fork and was startled. She was dirty. She thanked him for the comment and quickly resolved the issue. The man asked if she'd had enough and wanted more. But Erin said everything was fine and she was full. Jeffrey said that if she ever wanted more, she should just ask. There was no need to rush into it. He added that if she worked there, she would always get treats. The girl noticed that he looked embarrassed. The girl guessed. She asked if he made it himself. Her guess turned out to be correct. He explained that he himself was a very picky eater. The girl knew Jeffrey was a genius, but to think he could also bake such amazing cakes. Jeff looks so elegant now. Embarrassed, the man decided to change the subject. He said that, in any case, enough chatter about other things. Jeffrey would explain to her what to do, so he told Erin to follow him. The man handed the girl a book. He had written it himself and had never seen a book in this empire that could surpass it. The girl thanked him. He added that he had lent her the book. Jeff doesn't give books to just anyone. The young lady listened. The man said that in any case, now that she had regained her energy, the girl asked again. He explained that for people like them, he meant geniuses. They needed sweets. Sugar helps the brain function. The girl was embarrassed and grateful that a man like Jeffrey called her a genius. But this meant that the cake she ate was just fuel for productive work. The girl thought about this and was a little upset. But this did not change the fact that he baked the cake himself, and it was amazing. The man laid a pile of papers on the girl's desk and told her that, like in the morning, she should find the errors. Erin was surprised by the volume of work. The girl was a little upset. What kind of exploitation of child labor is this? But as soon as Jeffrey said he'd make chocolate and apple pies tomorrow, all the negative emotions vanished. She promised he'd work hard. The girl walked contentedly down the corridor and hummed a children's song under her breath. She thought that magical science would be the perfect bait for Jeffrey. But she didn't expect it to work so well. It was even better than what the girl expected. If she shows interest in this area, helping him with his research, naturally, her attractiveness will increase. When she reaches the highest level, if the girl pushes him a little, will he adopt her? Then she will spend the rest of her life enjoying luxury in Burano's house. The girl was simply elated. With this plan, it was definitely possible. But then someone called out to her, and not just that, but insultingly. They called her a peeing baby. It was two acrobat brothers, Avalon and Bimel. One asked what she was doing in the main building. She expected to run into them someday, since they were the sons of Harvanik, but they're still as rude as ever. The girl asked why. They didn't even understand what the question was about. The girl concluded that, judging by everything, they had often harassed little Erin. She had also had to bow and grovel while performing behind-the-scenes work when she was a secretary. But now that she's on the same level as these guys, she has no reason to feel inferior. She said she was busy and suggested they talk later. Naturally, the boys were angry at such impudence. One said she must have really gone crazy. The boy came up to her and pointed his finger at her, asking how she dared speak to them like that. What was she doing in the main house? They noticed that today she wasn't crying and was staring somewhere. The girl said she wasn't an outsider, so there was no need to tease her. She asked if they would like it if she called them pissing brothers. The boys were surprised by such boldness and became nervous. Apparently, it was true. One brother asked the other how she found out, but that seemed like too much of a question. She learned about this in her past life. Their mother said that recently, her two sons, this is what their mother worried about day and night while she worked. Erin said she'd keep it a secret anyway, so they should stop bothering her. She asked why they kept doing this. She was their little sister. There was nothing they could do. They asked why she was their little sister. The second one said he thought something was wrong, but now he sees she's smug, having found their weak spot. The girl decided to run away, not wanting to get into any more trouble because of them. But who said she could just walk away? A large boy stood in front of her. He said this road was for outsiders. The girl thought about how vile these boys were. The girl asked what if she didn't want to. The boy told her that then she wouldn't be able to take another step. Erin became indignant. Why would she do this? She told the big boy to get out of her way while she was still kind. The girl began to speak. If the Duke finds out that the chubby boy is doing this, but she was interrupted. The boy raised his voice and asked how she dared threaten him. Suddenly, he grabbed her by the hair, lamenting that it was unspeakable impudence to treat him like that. He said that the girl is just a small fry, but she is behaving too brazenly. Then they hit her where it hurt. The boy asked if she was going to tell her father about it. Go ahead, let him try. He added that Grandpa wouldn't even care if someone like her disappeared right now. If she is an orphan, then let her sit quietly, as befits people like her. Suddenly, a heavy book flew up over the boy's head and landed right on his face. The girl defended herself. She asked, "So what if she's an orphan?" Both boys were terrified. Erin concluded that she'd rather be left without parents than be trash like them. The boy's forehead began to bleed. Erin began to drive them away, waving her weapon. But then Hyun, the larger boy, lunged at Erin. How dare she hit him? The boy threatened his father, and like a mama's boy, ran to complain, and his brother followed him. The boys started complaining to their father, saying that the stranger hit Hyun, and that their father should punish her. The girl appeared behind her brothers and looked pitifully at their father. He met her gaze and responded with his own contempt. Dad asked why they were fighting. They said they were just asking why she came to the main house, and she called them peeing babies. Then Hyun added that as if that weren't enough, she hit him with a book. The girl was surprised by such a brazen lie. Erin was afraid to go out into the world. They asked her if she was trying to convey that she had grown up without parents. The boys asked her to teach her good manners. Father told Hyun to calm down, after he'd been beaten by a girl much smaller than him. But why didn't she apologize to her older brothers and end it? The girl was surprised by such injustice. He'd started a fight, and even hit her hard enough to leave a bruise. She asked if he wanted her to apologize. Erin thought it was her brothers, not her, who should apologize after they'd insulted her. The man asked if the young lady intended to answer his question. She should quietly lay low, and after this, she still dares to ignore the words of a grown man with status. The man screamed so loudly that the girl's hair stood on end. He ordered her to apologize, but the girl said Avalon started it. The man came closer and ordered her to kneel and apologize properly. The girl was scared. She knew that look in Harvanik's eyes all too well. He was telling her to shut up and not interfere. Erin considered this. He wouldn't let her go until she got on her knees. In that case, maybe she should just... Suddenly, a voice interrupted her thoughts. He asked what betrayal this girl had committed to deserve such humiliation. It was Jeffrey. He stood up for her. But what was he doing here, just passing by? The man approached the girl and gently stroked her hair, and said that she had certainly made a mess of things. But Harvanik said he was raising her, so why was Jeff interfering? Jeff asked, "Is anyone really in too much pain here?" It didn't seem like anyone was hurt any worse than they thought. Harvanik screamed, "Who was really hurt here? He asked me not to make fun of him. Can't Jeffrey see what a mess that bratty girl made by hitting his son?" The girl dared to hit the legitimate child of the Barono family. How could she do this to her brother? Harvanik's words. A boy who pulls hair and calls someone a parasite and an orphan. How can he be her brother? Harvanik said Jeff was talking nonsense. Who said that? Did he see it happen? He replied that anyone curious could see for themselves. Harvanik tried to say something else about the girl, but Jeffrey told her that they didn't have time to waste. The girl agreed and ran after Jeffrey, who was already moving out of his brother's sight. The man sat Erin down and began to carefully treat the abrasions left by the little brat. But Jeff still told the girl to be more careful from now on. She needed to make a good impression so that he would actually consider adoption when the time came. But the girl had made such a big mess. Erin thought that a person like her might be useful as an assistant, but Jeff wouldn't agree to adopt her. Of all the people, Jeffrey caught her. The man said that after all this chaos, those brothers wouldn't bother her for a while. The girl didn't understand. He said he was talking about Avalon and Baymel, but then he remembered and asked Aaron if they were by any chance the pants-wetting brothers, or something like that. Jeff said he'd turn a blind eye this time because he'd found her. But if anything happened in the future, she had to tell him. She was his assistant, and Jeff was the boss. The girl obeyed. She said that now she would not ruin anything again. Jeffrey saw that the girl felt guilty, so he reminded her that she had done nothing wrong today. He handed her the book and told her not to apologize anymore unless she'd done something wrong. Aaron thanked him. She thought everyone with the last name Barauno was on the same side. Everyone except her. Jeff said he'd picked up the book from the ground and dusted it off, but if it bothered her, he'd buy her a new one. The young girl retorted, saying she really liked the book. It was the one he'd trusted her enough to lend her. She remembered his words about not giving books to just anyone. The girl came to her room in the evening. Her maid gasped when she saw what was happening to the young lady's clothes and face and asked what had happened. The girl thought it would be a disaster if she told Marie, and strange rumors would spread. So Aaron said nothing terrible had happened. She'd just fallen. Of course, Marie didn't really believe it. She said the girl had simply fallen, but she looked like she'd been in a fight. Marie was beginning to think it was Jeffrey who had treated her this way, but Aaron repeated that she'd simply fallen, and Jeff had even helped treat her wounds and taken care of her. Marie took her hands and asked that, no matter what happened, she tell her everything as it was. Aaron agreed. Marie again asked the girl to be honest, as that was the only way she could help her even a little. The girl said she really did trip on the stairs. Marie said that after the fever, the young lady really did seem like a different person. Of course, Aaron understood why the maid thought that. The only thing the girl cared about when she found herself in this body was how to survive. She didn't even consider what the real Aaron was like. She thought that if anyone suspected her, it would be Marie, who was closest to her. How could she explain this so that she would simply forget about it? Mari said she doesn't tell Aaron that she doesn't like her anymore, now that she's become so different. She admitted that she liked such a young lady even more. But she shouldn't hide her pain and asked for a promise. Marie moved closer to the little girl and took her delicate, tiny hands in hers. Aaron promised. A little girl walked down an elegant corridor, holding a scroll tightly in her hands. She turned to Jeffrey. Seriously, how could he even think about throwing this away? These are plans for magical instruments that will be commercially available in 10 years. They will be indispensable in the future. Of course, materials are hard to find these days, and the Ori are too far ahead of their time to gain popularity. She barely managed to save them after learning they were going to be thrown out. If they start selling them and patent them now, they'll be rolling in cash when demand skyrockets. Once they're manufactured, they're sure to attract constant attention. If the girl can make money from this, she'll have a backup plan if, God forbid, Jeffrey doesn't adopt her. The only problem is timing. 3 days ago, Jeff left for the royal palace. In his past life, he also left for the palace, but not as suddenly as now. Initially, she wanted to follow him after the adoption. Perhaps the fact that she was his assistant sped things up. Unless things change radically from her past life, Jeffrey will be very busy when he returns. Before that happens, she needs to produce and distribute the product. While the girl was pondering this, a man with a cane appeared behind her. But how could a 7-year-old like her gather these expensive materials, make products, and distribute them? The girl turned around and was very surprised by the man standing behind her. It turned out to be the Duke. The man looked incredible, even though age had left its mark. He asked, "What is she doing here?" Aaron was lost in thought again. The last time she'd seen him in his past life, the Duke had looked very ill, but now he still seemed healthy. He distracted her and asked if she intended to answer his question. The girl was terribly awkward. The only thing she could say at that moment was a greeting. She had never spoken to the Duke one-on-one. She answered the question and said she was Jeffrey's assistant. Her grandfather asked, "Where is Jeff himself?" The girl said that Jeffrey had left for the royal palace a few days ago. For some unknown reason, Grandpa became incredibly angry upon hearing this news. Duke said Jeff was still wasting his life in the lab. Aaron didn't understand her grandfather's reaction. Was he unhappy that Jeffrey had gone to the palace? Suddenly, the Duke shouted. He asked me to tell Geoffrey that if he continued in the same spirit, the Duke would throw him out of the estate, so he had better come to his senses. The girl didn't understand what her grandfather had just said. She was stunned by his behavior. It was true that Geoffrey was obsessed with his work, but he wasn't so obsessed that he didn't know what he was investigating, as rumors around the mansion had it. If only the Duke knew he was researching something as important as Elfro. Then first the girl will have to take the lab from him. What should the girl do then? The young lady gathered all her strength, overcame her fear, and told her grandfather that this was not right. Suddenly, a butler appeared from somewhere. He brought news that everything was ready, but the Duke told him to wait a minute. Grandfather asked his granddaughter, "What's wrong?" Aaron said the Duke can't kick Geoffrey out. He doesn't do anything useless. As his assistant, the girl knows that if this research is completed, it will be of great help to the entire empire. He can't even imagine how enormous the profits from Elfro will be. It will bring in enough money to support 3 generations without forcing them to work. The Duke chuckled. The girl said that he would soon be earning money, so he would no longer have to beg for anything from the Duke. But her grandfather interrupted her and asked, "Is that what Jeff told her?" The girl was confused, but she still answered, a little hesitantly, that it was so. The Duke nodded. A man who tries to live like a madman, held back by the past. The girl didn't understand what her grandfather was talking about. The Duke changed the subject and said that if the girl tried to deceive him, she would get into big trouble. But then the grandfather asked what the young girl was doing as Geoffrey's assistant. Erin even said with a bit of pride that she finds incorrect calculations and corrects them. The Duke asked, "Is this mental arithmetic?" At this point, the girl's pride was off the charts. She was proud that Geoffrey called her a genius, and of course, she bragged about it to her grandfather. The Duke and the butler took the document and began to examine its contents with great interest. Dvoretsky said he didn't really understand the equations used in magical science. Simply reading magical equations is impressive, but solving them mentally, simply mind-blowing. The girl was glad that she was highly appreciated and even praised in front of the Duke himself. Grandfather also held the paper and looked at Erin. It was a very complicated equation. He asked if she had been the one to do it. The girl proudly replied that she had. The Duke asked again if Geoffrey had taught her this. The girl said she'd simply figured out the calculations herself. But Geoffrey had told her a little about the laws of magical science. Grandfather asked Erin what she planned to do with all this. The girl said Geoffrey told her she could use it however she wanted. Her grandfather asked if these drawings were the result of her research. Erin answered honestly that she hadn't. The Duke asked again. So, she was trying to study them? Not to study, but the girl wants to create and sell the items shown in this drawing. The man asked again. Is she sure she wants to make and sell this? What is she talking about? The girl was already a little happy, because it seemed to her that the Duke was interested. She explained that the items depicted in this drawing may seem unusual now, but in the future, everyone will want them. She's sure even Grandpa will want at least one. He asked, "Something everyone would want?" The older man noticed the girl's eyes light up. The Duke asked if this was the product she claimed it was. The girl said yes. The grandfather asked if she was sure it would sell well. The girl again answered yes. The man looked closely at the girl. As a wise man, he saw something in her. But what? He said that then, even if research funding is cut after the annual meeting, it will be possible to do it independently. The girl had just started explaining why he was doing this all of a sudden. If what Erin was saying was true, there wouldn't be any problems with funding. The girl wondered if this meant she had just made a mistake. The Duke and the butler were talking about something. Okay, but still. The girl wanted to continue, but her grandfather stopped her and said that he had heard everything he needed to. The Duke also said that the girl should stop sitting here alone and return to her place. Had she really just been ranting about the blueprints for nothing? Or had the Duke come here in the first place just to say that? Whatever it was, one thing was certain. She had just made the situation worse. The Duke strode quickly down the corridor, his butler catching up. The servant asked him if he hadn't said he was planning to get rid of the laboratory today. He said it was true. Then why was he leaving? The Duke asked to leave it until the annual meeting. The Duke asked the butler what he thought about it. The man smiled politely at his master. He asked again if the gentleman was asking about Geoffrey, but the Duke grew angry and said he wasn't asking about that scoundrel. The butler quickly guessed what the gentleman was asking. As for the young lady, she is much smarter than her peers and clearly has great potential. Yes. On the day she first arrived at the mansion, this girl didn't say a word. If her father is so against it, maybe she should just leave home. Her father was so sure that he would leave the family, but he died, leaving behind only his daughter. Left alone, this girl would have been unable to understand the adult world, so they took her in. Yet, how could she have changed so drastically? Perhaps Geoffrey discovered the young lady's talent, and that gave her confidence? The Duke said the fool couldn't even take care of himself, let alone make discoveries. Every time Geoffrey's name is mentioned, the Duke becomes like this. Perhaps this is simply the young lady's true nature coming to light. Children adapt quickly to new surroundings. The butler turned to the Lord again. Now that it had come to this, what did he think of the young mistress receiving a formal education like the young lord's, supporting and nurturing talented children? That's what the Barano family is known for, isn't it? In that case, the butler believes the young lady's abilities perfectly match that motto. Talent! The butler added that the young lady was still too young to be tested. The Duke asked, "Tested for what?" The servant explained, "Didn't she say she would make things and sell them to fund research? What could this kid do?" The Duke just thought that if Brat Geoffrey heard about this, he might pull himself together. And Raffern's thoughts are about to crumble into dust, turning out to be wrong. The girl called her girlfriend and ran to him, saying that she had something to show him. The young lady stood outside Raphael's office. She thought the meeting with his confidants would have ended by then. The Duke usually divides his time between his mansion in the capital and the castle, but this time he stayed at the castle for quite a while. Probably because he was preparing for the annual meeting. Annual meeting. As the name suggests, this is an annual event where the Burano family gathers to present their accomplishments or make important decisions. A grand event held only 3 days a year. It wields considerable authority and influence. Decisions are strictly regulated, and changing them requires another year. Therefore, no one ever misses a meeting. If all goes as planned, the announcement of Aaron joining the Harvenick family will also be made during this gathering. Again, this period will be tense, only in a different way. In a past life, during the annual meeting, the girl stayed up all night, preparing the reports that Harvenick had to present. Harvenick always focused only on short-term profits and had no interest in future-oriented business. So, when things went badly, he'd pay several times more just to cover it up. His subordinates were always the ones who cleaned up after his failed ventures, and the girl had to write reports that presented these failures as successful enterprises. It's terrible. She's even afraid just to remember those times. Compared to this, working with Geoffrey is really comfortable and calm, but it's easy to disappear once the job is done. Even the best workplace becomes just as bad if the boss acts like this. And if they announce her adoption, and on top of that, announce the end of Geoffrey's research, it will truly be irreversible. Of course, in her past life, there was no talk of stopping his research, but the circumstances this time are a little different, so the girl can't just sit idly by. But she can't be completely sure that her plan will work. But no, she can't think about the bad. How can she be scared already? She needs to stop worrying for no reason. If it's Raphael, who has supported Barano as their leader all his life, then this offer will definitely attract his attention. A man stood at the door, ushering everyone into the Duke's office. The girl stared at this gentleman as if enchanted. The man looked down and noticed the young lady. They asked him what had happened. He replied that the young lady had come to visit them. The adults began to look at Erin and praise her appearance, especially her outfit. They discussed how young the girl was. Could she really be the late colony's child? Someone said that, after mentioning her father, the girl became even more like him. The Duke trusts and relies most on his close associates gathered here. Erin thought that if she made a good impression on them, it might even be more effective than impressing the Duke himself. The girl merely greeted the adults, and they already began to praise her politeness. The young lady noticed a familiar face. It was Viscount Deuce, looking younger than she remembered. He asked the girl what brought her here. The girl replied with a smile that she had just come to see her grandfather. The man was surprised and asked what it meant that the girl brought the drawing to show to the head of the family. The Viscount's butler suggested that perhaps, at her age, she had learned to write a letter to celebrate having learned to write. But in any case, the head of the family will be very happy. No wonder everyone says how adorable the granddaughters are. The Viscount said that the man was out of his mind to fantasize like that in front of a young lady. The girl was holding a large notebook in her hands. The gentleman led the girl behind him. They approached the huge ornate doors, and the man opened them. He informed the lord that a young lady had come to see him. The duke noticed. It turned out he was still at the meeting. The girl was very embarrassed and greeted her grandfather. She couldn't even lift her head. A girl told the lord that a young lady had come to give him something. She seemed to be trying very hard to get to him by the end of the meeting. The grandfather asked the girl to come closer. She obeyed and wondered why these people weren't leaving. The man asked what she had brought him. She said there was something she really wanted to show him. He asked again. The duke noticed her fear. Then she saw him angry at Geoffrey. It's no wonder she's a little afraid of him. They sat the girl down on the sofa, and she thanked him for it. He asked if he needed to look it over right now, to which the girl confidently replied yes, and handed him the notebook. As soon as Grandpa picked up the notebook and wanted to examine it, a crowd formed behind him. He asked why everyone was still there. The girl hesitated and said that everyone had become too interested in how well the young lady could draw. The Duke said that interest should be put aside, and since they had plenty of work, let them get on with it. Everyone left, and only the Viscount remained nearby. The man said he would wait a little longer. Something had just occurred to him that he had forgotten to mention. Grandfather tisked. The Duke began to silently examine what was written on the paper. He looked too serious, so the girl looked at him and felt a little nervous. The Viscount noticed that even when he was reading the most secret documents, he was never so slow. He assumed it might be some kind of threatening letter sent to the young lady. He would never read such a letter with that expression on his face. But suddenly, the grandfather started laughing. He seemed hysterical from what he saw and read. No one understood what was happening. As soon as he calmed down, he began to speak. But the Viscount interrupted him and asked him to also take a look at what the girl had brought. The Duke handed over the notebook. The letter asked her grandfather to turn the blueprints into products and sell them. He could keep all the profits for himself. In exchange, the girl asked the Duke to keep the laboratory and not kick him out. She also drew a cute picture. The Viscount noticed that this was not just a letter from his granddaughter, but in fact a business proposal. The head of a trading empire, like her grandfather, is being coerced into cooperation with the help of a clumsy, childish letter. In the letter, the girl asked to turn the page if her grandfather agreed. Otherwise, don't turn it. The next page contained important information about the products. The Viscount understood why he had been turning the pages so deliberately. The Viscount handed back the notebook and thought that he was very curious about the contents of the next page. But strictly speaking, he could not view such confidential information. But it's so intriguing! A proposal written in colored pencils that even includes the ability to subjugate a negotiating partner. Grandpa said her proposal was interesting, but what if they continued to incur losses? Aaron said he wouldn't go into the red anyway. She explained that if the goods didn't sell, he could disassemble them and reuse them. The Duke asked about the initial manufacturing costs. The girl said that even taking into account production, compared to research funds, it is not worth paying attention to at all. In other words, no matter how poorly the products sold, it would at least achieve the goal of reducing research costs. The Duke thought she wasn't just mindlessly repeating adults' words. She was actually consciously making a real deal. What about this child? The girl summed things up and told her grandfather it was a win-win deal for everyone. Grandfather clarified that the girl wanted to say that even if she didn't succeed, she would still break even. The Duke thought it over and turned to Viscount Deuce. He asked if they had any magic stones left that they could use. Deuce said there must have been some left over from other deals. They could make about 50 magical tools. The Duke turned to Aaron and asked if she would like to try what she had proposed using the magical stones. The girl was very surprised that her grandfather agreed. She couldn't believe her ears. Of course, she said yes. The Viscount asked the gentleman what he meant, but the Duke had not yet finished, so he asked not to interrupt him. The grandfather asked the girl about the first product she wanted to sell. The Duke told her to work on the prototype first. He would assign someone to help the girl. Once the product is ready, Viscount will help distribute it. Since there are about 50 of them, they can be displayed in Juando's shop. The Viscount said that it was certainly possible, but didn't he first need to know what he was selling? The Duke said it's something that's rather unusual right now, but in the future, absolutely everyone will want it. The Duke looked at the girl and said that he would want this too. Raphael said it was worth a try and would look forward to the results. The girl was delighted and said that she would try her best. She was so glad she made the bet. It was a huge success. If all the products are sold, even though Erin won't receive any money, but if the magical instruments are sold, she won't be kicked out of the lab. So, everything will be fine. The most important thing is to make a good impression on clients. The girl decided that before Jeffrey returned, she would look through the magazines. And for the rest of the week, she would focus on making the products. Erin paused. She was doing exactly the same thing as yesterday, but why did it seem so much more fun today? Maybe because she got rid of one burden? It's strange. Nothing much has changed. The decision about adoption hasn't been made yet, Rayfern. Still says he will continue to monitor. But why does she feel like something has been resolved? Suddenly, some wonderful woman called the girl. The girl ran up to her and said she was there. The woman was happy about it. The woman said she'd seen her before at the library, but hadn't had the chance to properly greet the young lady. The woman's name was Alfana, and she was a librarian. Alfana wasn't the same librarian she'd seen when she worked there. Well, she didn't even look around during her first year. Alfana must have been here before. For now, she decided to greet the librarian properly. The young girl said that Jeffrey wasn't here. Alfana said she hadn't come to see him. She'd come to drop off the books Jeff had ordered. Books? The young lady was very surprised. What kind of books were these? Jeffrey had ordered quite a few of them. The girl asked what that meant. Alfana only said that Jeffrey had left her a message as well. The librarian relayed his words. This time, he wasn't lending them, but giving them away. And if the girl didn't want to read them, she could just put them aside. The woman, as if copying him, raised her index finger towards him. The girl was surprised by his words. To put it aside? He even prepared new books for her. It's like he's telling her to study harder. Or maybe he thought that old books might remind her of bad things, so he bought new ones? The girl was unsure. She remembered the moment when the man had protected her and tended to her wounds. She felt very awkward, and at the same time very pleased. No one had ever cared about her like that. Jeffrey entered the room and cursed that it had only just started raining. He looked around and couldn't believe that this was the Imperial Research Laboratory. After all this research, the only thing they could come up with was a semblance of what was needed. It was like some kind of joke. He sank wearily into a chair and rubbed his eyes with his hand. Jeffrey was clearly exhausted. After all, another pointless attempt. Jeffrey was approached and told that they completely understood his utter disappointment. A strange man appeared and said that trying to determine the composition from the burnt traces, he knows that this is an impossible task. Jeffrey propped his heavy head on his hand and fell into deep thought. Jeff said they had to figure this out no matter what. Even a 7-year-old could spot errors in the formulas, and the lead researcher was constantly grumbling. He thought about Erin. Thanks to her, their stagnant research had finally moved forward, and she spoke as if there was nothing special about it at all. Even though the girl spends the whole day in the laboratory, she does not look tired or bored. Perhaps we should consider raising Erin more as an apprentice. Laying the foundations is also important. It would be a good idea to send her to an academy or institute for a proper education. No, she's too young. The academy might have an age limit. In that case, Jeff could train her himself until she enters the academy. Jeffrey even smiled slightly at the thought. And then, the man's pupils dilated. A memory of a little girl shoving a piece of paper with an A in his face flashed through his mind. The man twirled the girl in his arms, while the woman behind him laughed joyfully. Erin lay on her bed, reading a book. She hadn't felt this calm in a long time. Since returning from Duke Raffarin's office the last 2 weeks, she'd accomplished as much work as she had in her previous life. But Erin finished the journaling assignment Jeffrey assigned her yesterday, so if she finishes this book before Jeffrey returns tonight, she'll be a smart girl. The maid reminded Erin that she had said she would rest today. Erin replied that she was resting. Marie said that at a time like this, the girl should go outside and play in the garden. Children grow well when they play outside. Before this, Erin couldn't leave her room because she had a fever. The maid insisted that her lady go outside and take a walk in the fresh air. Erin thought that if she overdid it again and got sick, she'd feel incredibly guilty. In the end, she agreed. The weather was wonderful. Blooming season had begun. Now, when she went out for a walk, she could smell the pleasant, delicate scent of flowers. The girl hid behind a column and fixed her gaze towards the gazebo. A woman and a man stood in the gazebo. The woman said that if they didn't enroll this year, she would completely fall out of favor with her father. The man said he understood. The woman felt relieved that a man understood her. It was Saria Burano, Harvenik's wife. The man next to Saria looked very familiar to the young lady. Suddenly, the woman handed some kind of package to the man. Saria said that once the admission was confirmed, she would take care of the rest. Harvenik's wife sharpened her gaze and clarified that they would pass, no matter what happened. The man asked if she doubted him, regardless of the test results. They'll get in without a problem. But Saria was about to continue talking when she heard a suspicious sound. She looked around and noticed that little Erin was lying on the floor. Saria said she was pleased the children were doing well. It was all thanks to his dedicated work. The man bowed and said it was all thanks to her children's abilities, and he had done nothing. The woman praised him for his modesty and asked him to be more careful. The man listened to the advice and said that he would soon leave here. Saria approached the girl and asked if she knew that she should greet her elders. The girl hesitated a bit, but eventually said hello. Saria asked how long she had been there. The girl said she wasn't sure, as she was simply following a butterfly. Saria believed her and told the girl to go away, and she obeyed. She wondered what she'd just seen. Had Harvenik's sons been bribed into the Imperial Academy? Since the conversation was about admission, the person who spoke to Saria, it must have been Hilberg, who had previously worked as a tutor for the Burano family. The girl couldn't believe Hilberg had helped Avalon and Beimel with their illegal admission. It was no wonder someone as foolish as Avalon could have gotten into the Imperial Academy. That's why he always struggled through exams and barely graduated. At times like these, it would have been nice to have a magical recording device. What a shame. In any case, the girl decided that she would remember this bribery situation and take advantage of it someday. Suddenly, the young lady was called out, and she froze, torn from her thoughts. It was Butler, the butler. He bowed and invited her into the head of the family's study. The Duke had called her. A tall grandfather stood in the middle of his office and waited for his granddaughter. The girl ran up to him and greeted him. The Duke greeted his granddaughter in the same manner. He said he called her because he wanted to conduct an interim inspection today. The girl didn't understand. Apparently, it worked even better than she expected. The man handed her a portable hairdryer and asked if she wanted to try it. The girl picked it up and considered it. It was a hairdryer, the essence of which was already familiar to the public, so it wouldn't be a novelty to them. But the real value of this product is that it has the ability to be used for a long time. As the girl said, there seems to be quite a high demand for this product. The Duke heard that the first 50 hairdryers that were made were sold out as soon as they were put on display in Huando's shop. Emphasizing that it automatically regulates the temperature to prevent overheating, he heard that young aristocrats were lining up at Huando to order. It had been a long time since Grandpa had seen Deuce so inspired during a conversation. That's why the girl initially wanted to sell it. The hot air machines they use are large, but the process of heating and cooling air is complex, and if you're not careful, you can completely burn your hair. Therefore, using it was quite problematic. But this hairdryer allows you to set the desired temperature, and it's lightweight. It was the first product to gain popularity when magical tools became widespread. Now it's probably so expensive that only aristocrats can afford it. But she's sure the wealthy ladies thought it was worth it. The Duke said he didn't know Erin had such a talent for sales. Although he called it a preliminary inspection, everything was already sold out. This was more like a final settlement. The Duke said he was thinking about releasing more of these. The girl liked the idea. Does this mean the plan to close the lab during the annual meeting will be cancelled? Let the Duke no longer interfere with Jeffrey. He should continue his research in peace and care for her once he adopts the girl. The Duke said he was sorry he had been inattentive to her up until that moment. Raphael said he should have said that when they first met. But would she forgive that old man? The girl understood that this was a huge step towards closer relations between them. Erin said that everything was fine. She was glad that she could talk to her grandfather. The old man, as an apology and as a gift, offered her the opportunity to study. The girl believed that if it was a sales reward, the gift should be tangible, something she could hold in her hands right now. Of course, she meant treats. The young lady said she was studying on her own. The Duke chuckled and said she was wonderful. The butler intervened. He said the master wanted to provide her with a systematic education so that she could further hone her abilities. The butler sat the girl down and went to get her some cocoa. The girl thought this wasn't what she wanted. How could she put it so they would understand? Suddenly, a man entered the office. The Duke and the girl looked at him. The girl was surprised. It was Hilberg, that very man. Raphael said he was just in time and invited him to sit down. Hilberg hoped he hadn't kept the gentleman waiting. The Duke had said he'd arrived on time. Hilberg was clearly surprised. Maybe he thought the girl had ratted him out. She'd certainly like to, but there was no proof. Raphael pointed to the girl and said he'd told him about her. Hilberg thought she was a distant relative. He added that the girl certainly seemed as intelligent as the gentleman had said. The Duke said Hilbert would be tasked with developing her potential. The girl was certainly young, but the grandfather believed the speed of her learning would be astonishing. The teacher said he had no intention of objecting. Grandfather introduced Hilbert to the girl. He would guide Erin in various areas until her path was firmly set. The girl smiled good-naturedly, introduced herself, and of course, bowed to the teacher. The teacher said that thank God there was no need for additional ethics lessons. The girl was definitely a good girl. The butler suggested the young lady could excel at the Preparatory Institute and enter the Royal Academy as a top student. The Duke said it was entirely possible. Hilberg said it seemed like the day of the inspection was something to look forward to. Grandpa told the teacher to forget about it, as he had to attend the entrance ceremony for the best student first. The girl was nervous and did not understand what these adults were talking about. If the adoption fails, forget about the academy. She'll die before that happens. Jeffrey checked the girl's work and praised her. He didn't expect the girl to organize all the magazines while he was gone. Erin said that once she started, she found it fun and finished it fairly quickly. The girl also finished the books Jeff lent her. She will continue to diligently study the new books he gave her. The man was surprised by this attitude. The girl was upset that from now on, she would not be able to come to the laboratory every day because of her classes. Should she tell him that she won't be able to come to the lab on the day of class? Finally, she made up her mind and said that she had something to tell him, and it was very important. Who gave him the right to take his assistant and send her to training? With these words, Jeffrey burst into his father's office. The Duke immediately raised his voice, but he noticed his granddaughter's reaction to his raised voice, and so he immediately shut up. He felt very ashamed and awkward in front of the girl. The Duke said Jeffrey needed to learn good manners first. But Jeff said the only one who had broken etiquette was his father. Jeffrey asked why his father was making decisions about his assistant without consulting him. Raphael said the child needed an education, not a job. The Duke spoke as if Jeff had locked the girl in the lab and forced her to work. Raphael said that when she should have been free to run around and explore the world, Jeffrey locked the 7-year-old in a lab and forced her to work alone. The Duke added that he had no intention of raising another worthless scoundrel like himself in this house, so let him get out. The young lady was scared. She didn't understand what she should do. She followed him to stop him, but the situation quickly escalated. Could Raphael have held a grudge against Jeffrey all this time? Jeffrey said he would personally handle her training as an assistant, as well as her professional education. The scientist had already registered her as his official assistant. The Duke said enough was enough. He wasn't going to indulge Jeffrey's stubbornness. The scientist said that he would not allow his father to impose his will on him. Things are bad. What if the Duke kicks Jeffrey out and all the girl's efforts go to waste? She decided there was no need to be afraid. If she didn't say anything now, everything would spiral out of control. The girl took the plunge and said, "Can't she do both? Be a helper and study? Even if it's just a professional relationship, she can't stop being Jeffrey's assistant. It's the only way to continue seeing him. But she also can't pass up the chance to win the Duke's approval. But worst of all, she feels that if she refuses someone, she will lose contact with that person forever." Jeffrey said he would make sure the girl studied. He would send her to college or an academy. The Duke said she was still a child. For now, she can get an education at home. Jeffrey said he knows this child's abilities very well. The Duke said he knew too. And as soon as the girl decided to speak, both men in unison ordered Aaron to sit quietly. The butler appeared. He approached the girl and asked her for a minute. The girl seemed frozen. She looked at two people who were important to her, who were arguing. Jeffrey argued that he was responsible for her, and the Duke said that his son should not make him laugh. The Duke told his son to take care of himself first. Suddenly, the girl couldn't take it anymore and screamed at the top of her lungs. The men noticed her. She felt ashamed. The girl began to apologize. They instantly stopped arguing. Jeffrey said he was sorry. He picked up the girl and carried her away. The girl sat dejectedly on Jeffrey's desk, while the man himself fussed around her. He handed her a glass of an interesting drink and said it would calm her down. Ever since she'd become a child again, she'd had trouble controlling her emotions. She didn't expect to cry so loudly, just because she saw adults arguing. Jeffrey apologized to the girl for scaring her. Aaron wanted to say something, but Jeff said they would talk about it later. She shouldn't worry, it wasn't her fault. The man brought her something and told her to look at it. The girl didn't understand what it was. The girl hoped he wouldn't boast about how much work he'd brought back from the palace. Did he really think she, like him, was obsessed with research simply because they worked in the same field? But as soon as the girl saw what he brought her, she was stunned. These were sweets from Eliza's pastry shop, baked goods that even the royal family can only order by appointment. Jeffrey said he couldn't take much. He didn't have much time. The man stroked the girl's head and asked her not to eat too many sweets at once. Jeffrey noticed that Aaron was feeling a little better, so he asked her to tell him what had happened. He asked if Harvinick had visited the lab while Jeffrey was gone. Why did he suddenly mention Harvinick? The girl replied that she hadn't and asked why he was asking. He said he heard them creating a product using the designs the girl took. He was curious. He said he didn't care what she did with the drawings. Didn't he like that it turned into a product? Erin said she saw the plans and was curious about how it would work. When she told her grandfather this, he said he'd be happy to help. He asked if it was her idea, not her grandfather's. The girl said it was hers. She also planned to turn all the other drawings into products. She asked if it was okay. He replied that they were her drawings, and it was up to her to decide what to do with them. Thanks to this, the girl was able to save the lab and make money. Although, of course, she can't admit it outright. The girl said that she registered all the patents in Jeffrey's name. He asked again. It's a magical tool developed by Sir Jeffrey. Even if they don't see immediate profit, he'll be able to collect royalties in the future. That's what her grandfather told her. Jeffrey asked who ordered all this to be done. Since adding a patent would clearly indicate to anyone that it was Sir Jeffrey's creation, she said she wanted to do just that. The girl thought he only did it because if the lab were closed, she would have no money left and would need to somehow survive. If the girl spoke about this, he might go and start a fight with the Duke, so it was better for the girl to pretend she knew nothing. She said she wasn't sure she would be the only one who could do it. Jeffrey told her she was very difficult to understand. After Jeffrey met with the Duke and settled matters with him, it was decided that they would follow her wishes for now. This means she can continue her studies at the family estate and work as Jeffrey's assistant. Jeffrey suggested thinking a little about the future. He said that whether it is a scientific institution or an academy, it is still too early. Although Jeffrey was unhappy about all of this, he seemed to turn a blind eye to it when she showed how happy she was. Finally today, Marie told the young lady that she must return safe and sound. If the girl falls, she must definitely report it to the teacher. The girl said she understood. Erin began attending the academy, where she studied with a private tutor from the Browno family. Education in the Browno family primarily takes place at the academy. Most students are direct descendants, but, Outstanding children from collateral branches are sometimes granted the right to receive an education after passing certain tests. Since they are all from the same family, you should get along with them. Someone greeted the girl. It was a young boy. He asked if she was the heiress everyone was talking about. The girl greeted him back, but because of the bright light, she could not see who was greeting her. The boy came closer to her and introduced himself. His name was Eftelman. About a month had passed since he arrived at the castle. It turned out that he was 10 years old. She was surprised at how Fdelman looked. He's an experienced knight who will one day join the Imperial Knights, possessing a striking appearance that makes the hearts of young ladies flutter. If you don't know him, you might be suspected of not being an Imperial citizen. The girl told him her name and her age, and that she was pleased to meet him. Fdelman and Aaron turned around. Those two acrobatic brothers were bothering someone again. Fiddleman looked at them with an angry gaze, while the girl was slightly afraid. The boy they were harassing was named Niux Burauno. And unlike Fidelman, this child was famous for a completely different reason. This child will soon become the Imperial Palace's court mage, while mages like Jeffrey, who are magical scholars, use mana stones to fulfill their role. Mages born with mana in their bodies are considered to be in a completely different league. That's why mages in the Attainer Empire have always been treated like precious jewels. Hundreds of years have passed since a prominent mage appeared in the Empire. Niux would later awaken his abilities and become famous as the greatest mage. To think that such a person would become someone so great. And they mock him like this. If Nuke's father, Madali Burauno, if he found out about this, he would be furious. Why doesn't he tell his parents that they are treating him like this? If this continues, he'll wither away before he can even become a pretend magician. Fdelman turned to the brothers and told them to stop. It looked like Nyx was in pain. Avalon said that it was none of his business, and that he should continue to mind his own business. They insulted Niux and said he wasn't up to their standards. Evdelman asked if the girl knew them, to which she replied yes. Suddenly, one of the brothers ran up to the girl and pushed her off the desk with all his might. He said it was his seat and looked very smug. Suddenly, the teacher walked into the classroom with a stack of books. She wished everyone good morning, and all the students' eyes turned to her. Fdelman asked the teacher why she was there. Their teacher was late again. She replied that Lord Hilberg had encountered a problem, so he said today's lesson would be rescheduled for tomorrow. The woman smiled and told the students that they just had to finish the book by tomorrow. Someone asked why Hilberg was making them read some boring book again. She didn't react to this at all and said that she would probably go. Aaron thought about the woman leaving. In a way, it was a clever move. What could a powerless servant say in front of noble children? In the end, the one who can solve this problem is either an adult with power or someone with the same last name as the Burauno family. Well, as soon as the teacher left, the boys decided that they should continue where they left off. Suddenly, Aaron stood up on a chair, raised the book up, and shouted that she would now distribute the books to all the children. Many students approached her for books. While the girl was distributing them, her brothers chased her away from behind. The girl told them she read all the books here. Avalon didn't care. He asked, "So what? Now she thinks this is her house or something?" Aaron said that the place was open to their family's children anyway. The boy became even more angry. The girl thought that if there was still a little common sense, then there was no point in continuing to create problems. Niux and Ifdelman were looking at the book, and Ifdelman remembered that this was the book they had read last time. It was strange, because Alfana had never brought the wrong books before. The father of two brothers stood in his office. Someone knocked, and he let the guest in. It was Alfana. He asked why she was so late. She said that Mr. Hilberg had asked her to take the books to the academy, which was why she was late. He asked why her hands were empty. Where was the magazine she was supposed to come with? Sir Geoffrey said he would no longer work in the library and had moved all his materials to the lab. The man asked, "Since when?" Alfana said that it was around the time he made Lady Erin his assistant. The man asked what exactly this girl could do. Alfana hesitated. He yelled at her and ordered her to answer and not waste time. She said she wasn't wasting time, but he might not believe her. He said he'd decide for himself whether to believe it or not. Alfana explained that Lady Erin was tasked with finding errors in Sir Geoffrey's journals. The man was surprised and asked if a small child could possibly handle that. Alfana said that these weren't even simple mathematical calculations. These calculations are a complex formula that even some scientists can't easily solve, and she's doing them in her head. He was surprised. The man thought that, in a word, she was as brilliant as Jeffrey. He truly couldn't understand why his father needed to send this child to the academy. His wife said she still trembled when she thought about what that little girl did to their Avalon. The woman noticed that her husband wasn't listening to her at all. She asked him to find out why her father had suddenly become so concerned about her. He said Jeffrey's invention had been turned into a finished product that had unexpectedly generated a huge profit. But he'd heard it was that girl's idea. The woman asked if he really believed it. Her husband also said that the young gentleman's product design was entirely his from the start. How could they have taken it? But her husband admitted that these were empty words. He thought that if he took it, he would beat them to it, and everything would work out. Who would have thought that they would even take on this useless invention? He regretted not having drawn up that contract properly. His wife asked why the young master had given her the plans. In other words, he had given her his inheritance. The husband said the girl wasn't even his child, so what inheritance were they talking about? The wife said that made the situation even more suspicious. There is some bigger picture that they don't know about. Was there some kind of deal between the young master and his father? The girl was just a pretext. That's why he continues to pay so much attention to her. The husband exploded with anger. He asked the woman to stop talking. He felt like he was going crazy from her assumptions. The wife asked how she could not do this when her husband, like a fool, was just hanging around doing nothing. The man's wife's words made him even more angry. The woman said that wasn't about him. The wife approached her husband and asked him to look at their current situation. She knew it must be stressful, but shouldn't they think about what they could do as quickly as possible? My wife told me to listen carefully. It might seem like my father and the young master are at odds, but no one knows when they might suddenly unite. So first of all, they need to know what they are both up to. The man thought it was obvious that this brat was quite useful, so the father and Jeffrey quarreled over her. But if his father cares about her that much, she's not just a burden, but a real treasure, isn't she? The man told Alfana she could go. The woman didn't understand such a quick change. He shouted and told her to come when he called her. Couldn't she hear him? And yes, the next time a man asks her out, she should definitely have a copy of the magazine. And he warned that if the girl screwed up again, she better be prepared for it. As soon as Alfana left the office, she let out a sigh. It seemed the girl had gotten herself into something more tedious than she had thought. Aaron, Nix, and Eftelman appeared before Alfana. The librarian was surprised. She hadn't even noticed them appearing. Alfana asked if the children needed any books. But suddenly, Jeffrey appeared and asked where the librarian was during her working hours. The girl was very surprised and hesitated. Jeffrey asked why she reacted that way. She said she just didn't expect to see him there. The kids said they'd asked Jeff to bring them some books, since she'd apparently brought the wrong one. The woman was surprised that the children had come because they had been given the wrong book. Nuke said they had read it last time, so they had come to exchange it for another one. Alfana said she thought Mr. Hilberg would still want to look at the last book again because of Aaron's appearance. Didn't the teacher want both Nyux and Eftelman to repeat it again? Lady Aaron said it was all right, since she'd read all the books. Alfana asked again. The girl replied that this book was one of the ones Jeff had given her to read. Eftelman said it would take him a long time to read this boring book, and Nix found it full of complex expressions. And Aaron was simply entertained. Mr. Jeffrey watched silently and observed the conversations between the children and the librarian. Later, he approached Aaron and said that he had solved the problem so that the girl could safely go play with her friends. The girl didn't understand. She needed to look for their books, too. Alfana was surprised. Jeffrey invited her to meet him later in his lab. The children ran off, leaving Jeff and Alfana alone. He asked how the girl was settling into the academy. She said she thought the girl had become close to the little dukes she had just run away with. Jeff asked about the other children. Alfana said the girl apparently wasn't getting along with Lord Avalon. Jeff said he must have been bothering her again. He asked to keep an eye on Avalon the next time the girl went to the academy to see if Avalon bothered her again. The man added that if there were still people bothering Aaron, She was obliged to let him know. She should check everyone who's stalking her. Why are two brothers taking turns giving orders to such a simple librarian? The woman felt like a double agent. What should she do now? Eftelman suggested playing catch-up, and Nyux trailed behind, barely breathing and asking to wait for him. Eftelman waited for Erin to pack everything into her backpack. Once she did, they could go. The boys noticed Nyux, who apparently was very afraid to enter the classroom. Erin told him that Avalon was not in the classroom, and the boy could safely enter the room. Eftelman asked the girl if she was afraid of this Avalon. He had threatened the girl earlier, too. It must have been painful, but the girl didn't seem bothered at all. She said she didn't care. The boys started praising her. Even though she was younger, she didn't even blink when Avalon tried to hit her. She felt awkward. The girl really didn't know what to tell them. The girl asked Nyux why he didn't tell his parents that he was being bullied. He said he didn't want to tell them. Erin asked why. Nyx replied that he was afraid his parents would be ashamed of him. His father runs a huge ship and makes important deals with other aristocrats. He's the kind of guy who can say whatever he wants, even to really scary people. He's really cool. It's true. Medali is known for doing his job well. But Nyux can't even say that something bothers him and that Avalon drags him around every day. He's so afraid that if his father finds out, he'll consider him a disgrace to the family. It wasn't that the girl didn't understand the boy's feelings, but the girl decided to teach Nyx something very useful. The girl asked everyone to bend over and quickly. She revealed that, in fact, Avalon and Baymel still sleep in the same bed. Eftelman laughed and asked if that was true. Erin said yes, because she had heard their mother talk about it. The reason they can't do anything to her is because she caught them doing it. A blatant lie. Well, partly true, partly untrue, but that's not important right now. What matters is that Nyx understands how undeserving Avalon is of all fear. Erin turned to Nyx. If he can say that, then the girl will tell them you don't like it as long as it takes. If they ignore her and continue to bully her, she'll just beat them up. She smiled widely and said that she was not afraid of Avalon at all. Nyx listened attentively to her story. He was pleased that someone was willing to stand up for him. The girl said that from now on Nyx should hold on to her, saying that Nyx was counting on a girl. They shook their tiny hands. Eftelman asked to join them as well. The girl was returning home and thinking about how important it had been. She should spend more time with the kids tomorrow. Erin noticed a crowd of people, mostly men, at the window and was surprised. The girl didn't know who they could be. She concluded that, judging by everything, these people were in the mansion for the first time. Is it time for people to arrive at the estate already? Oh, they're all heading towards Duke Rayfairn's office. The girl began to worry because she hadn't prepared anything yet. At the very least, she should get there first and negotiate with the Duke. The girl ran faster than sound. She ran with her eyes closed and called for her grandfather. Suddenly, little Erin crashed into someone and fell to the floor. The voice asked the girl if she was okay and extended his hand. The cause of the fall turned out to be a man of a very peculiar appearance. The girl was a step late. Her uncle arrived first, along with this strange man. She went into her grandfather's office. He said there was nothing urgent, so why did she run like that? Someone asked the Duke about the girl. He gave her name and said he had mentioned this child before. The Duke said the girl was probably the same age as his son, Nyx. Yes, it was Modali. Burano. The grandfather called his granddaughter over, and she came up to him. It looked like the girl had just returned from the academy. If it were up to the Duke, he would talk to her right now, but there were guests there, so grandfather asked her to wait outside for a bit. It was a chance. The girl asked if she could listen too. She wanted to watch her grandfather work. She promised not to disturb him and to sit quietly. The Viscount said the little lady would do well to listen a bit too. It could be a good experience for the young woman, and perhaps she'll even come up with a good idea. Of course, the girl, like a child, liked the Viscount because he was a good cop. The Duke asked the strange-looking man if he minded if the girl stayed with them. He agreed. The man said the girl seemed to love her grandfather very much. It warmed the heart. Erin's uncle was expressing an opinion that no one cared about. He didn't mind either. The girl found it funny. His face showed how much he disliked it. The girl thought that if it were up to her, She'd let Harvinick do whatever he wanted, but if she let him get away with it, the damage would be irreparable. She couldn't just ignore it. Harvinick brought with him is a man named Truenet. And the reason the girl remembers his name is because Truenet once deceived Harvinick horribly. The damage done to the Barano family at that time was significant enough to make it an unforgettable event. Money that should have been hers entirely. How reluctantly she gave it up. And now the money she earned will be stolen by this swindler? She can't let that happen. This deal, no matter what happens, the girl will make sure it doesn't happen. The Duke had been informed in advance that Truenet was connected to the Felpak Merchant Guild. Truenet confirmed this. Truenet said that, first and foremost, he was the head of the Felpak Trading Guild. He asked to be called by his first name. Felpak Merchant Guild specializes in international maritime trade, rather than domestic. Instead of private trade, the guild focuses exclusively on international trade, trading only in high-end luxury goods. Among the main goods are antique works of art, handcrafted leather goods, and rare tapestries. Goods the Duke may have heard of. The Coke Trade Guild offers. But the Duke stopped the man, his brain already boiling from the information overload. In other words, they want to say that they want to import luxury goods and distribute them throughout the Duke's empire. From what the Duke had heard, their guild seemed capable of handling this on its own, without any problems. The Duke asked what exactly they expected from their guild. Truenet said that since their guild thrives outside the empire, they are unfamiliar with its inner workings. Modali asked if they were asking their empire to handle distribution within the empire. Truenet replied that wasn't all. They would also be grateful for assistance with transporting imported goods. Modali asked if they were to handle both distribution and transportation. What specific contribution would the Allied Guild make? Harvinick ordered Modali to watch his tone, but the man said he was simply curious. If they weren't involved in manufacturing goods or managing transportation, but only purchasing them, wasn't that what their guild already did? But these are luxury goods. Truenet stated this. Harvinick added that this is about brand trade, an important specialized business. The Viscount decided to calm everyone down and say that this wasn't a time for arguing. He pointed at the girl, making it clear that she might be frightened by the grown men's quarrels. Modali said luxury goods are complex to manage, involving interactions with numerous noble houses and requiring careful distribution. A single mistake could lead to significant losses. Harvinick responded that he believed their guild had reached a point where they needed to raise their standards. They needed to be willing to take some risks. The father of the family, and indeed the head of the family, listened attentively. But he was distracted by Truenet. The man said that he understood the Duke's concerns, but asked that he trust their guild. Truenet added that no one would dare to distribute counterfeits with the help of the powerful Coke Guild. The Duke said that they would further discuss this proposal in the guild and call them later. Rafiern told the guests not to worry. The proposal would be approved. They would receive a final answer before Sir Trunet's departure. Harvinick caught up with Truenet. He asked him not to worry too much. He would talk to his father again about the contract. Sir Truenet cheerfully replied that he did not think that this deal would fall through and would not take place. Will the Duke reconsider the case that his eldest son is promoting? However, considering the significant cost of the already reserved goods, he cannot wait forever. Harvinick asked if Sir Truenet was really offering to post bail. The man confirmed this. Wouldn't that make things more certain for both parties? Harvinick asked how much the man needed as collateral. Truenet named an exorbitant price. He said about 10 million gold pieces should be enough. Harvinick turned pale. Harvinick asked again. He didn't believe it would cost that much. Truenet told him there was nothing surprising about that. These are luxury items after all. Naturally, the deposit needs to be high, but this deposit needs to be prepared promptly. Since it's not urgent, there's no need to worry or rush the preparations. Harvinick missed out on Jeff's project because of that girl. The mine he acquired failed to meet expectations. His recent commercial results have hit rock bottom. He thought that if this continued, he wouldn't have a single project left after the annual meeting. If he backed down now, his reputation would be completely destroyed. The girl thought that by now, Truenet was probably already starting to raise the issue of bail. Although the deposit is inevitable, she must lock the main contract to minimize financial losses. Jeffrey approached the girl and asked why she was so serious. The girl replied that she was thinking about what product to release next. She wasn't sure any of these objects could immediately banish TrueNet. But perhaps there was a magical instrument that forced truth-telling? Jeffrey suggested that in such a case, it might be better to start by getting rid of what seems unusable. The man admitted that all these drawings seemed rather useless to him. The girl pointed to a staff in the drawings. Jeff said it was a magical instrument that determined the sex of animals. He created it at the time because he considered it a waste to throw away the formula he had discovered. But having already created it, the man realized that it was completely useless, so he threw it aside. I wonder if it has any commercial value? The girl thought this tool could be called a gender determiner. The girl asked if it was really such a useless thing. For example, if it could be used to tell whether an egg would hatch into a rooster or a hen, it might have some marketability. Jeffrey said he hadn't tested the tool, but it was probably just not possible. It is designed to distinguish existing roosters from hens, but setting it up to recognize eggs as chicken eggs would be difficult. Jeffrey was lost in thought. Well, maybe he could tell the difference between eggs, though. Erin screamed. Apparently, she realized something and asked Jeffrey to explain this part in more detail. Modali told the Duke that the risk on their part was too great. What was the point of saying nice things if in the end it only meant the Fellpack Guild would do nothing? The Viscount asked if the Fellpack Guild's business wasn't quite successful in other countries. Modali replied that it was, but counterfeit luxury goods, indistinguishable from the real thing, were rife on the market. The Viscount said that this is actually the main problem in this business. If their guild coke started doing this, there should be no counterfeits among their goods. Otherwise, the trust in the guild would be undermined. Erin entered the office. The girl apologized and asked if the men were busy. Grandfather said he hadn't even noticed that school hours were over. The Duke asked if the girl had come to see Grandfather again. Yes, but the girl had come to tell Grandfather about a good idea. Harvenick and Trunet went to see the Duke. Harvenick said that, as expected, his father also wanted the contract. Otherwise, there would be no reason to call the client back the next day, would there? We need to sign the contract today. Trunet said that would be absolutely wonderful. Harvenick walked into his father's office with a smile. As soon as he looked back, he saw the girl standing next to his father again. He couldn't understand why Erin was here again. The Duke said he had been expecting them and asked them to sit down. The reason he had called them, the Duke wanted them to delay the contract signing for a short time. Trunet didn't understand. The Duke said he meant he didn't want to rush things. The man added that it would be difficult to conclude a major deal without mutual trust. Trunet asked how they should gain this trust. Raffern said the girl would tell her how. Erin stood up and greeted Sir Trunet. Trunet was touched by the girl's appearance. He asked what sweet idea the young lady would like to share with him. I wonder if he'll still call it cute when he hears something. She asked if the gentleman had any samples to show them. He asked what she meant. He certainly had some. Erin asked to keep some samples. They planned to develop a magical tool that can determine whether a product is genuine or counterfeit. The man became worried and asked what the girl meant by this. So the girl says they'll create a counterfeit detector? She confirmed it. She said they have a tool called a gender detector, and they plan to modify its formula to create a counterfeit goods detector. Of course, the girl clarified that Jeffrey himself would do it. He seems to know that the magical tools Jeffrey creates work perfectly. Harvenick asked why Jeffrey would get involved in this. Wasn't Jeff indifferent to this kind of business? The Viscount intervened and said that the young gentleman had been working with this young lady recently. She had told him about this deal, and he was helping her with it. Harvenick suggested putting Jeffrey aside. The Duke decided to praise the girl. She simply listens to what adults say and knows how to choose the perfect moment. Trunet asked if this magical instrument was ready yet. The girl said it wasn't yet, but the first draft was ready, so it looked like it would soon go into production. The Duke heard there had been too many fakes on the market lately, so they'll just check them out. There's no need to worry too much about it. Trunet left. Harvenick ran after him and asked why he hadn't consulted him. Shouldn't he explain why he left without providing a sample? Trunet said that if they were so cautious, shouldn't he be better prepared? However, the carriage was full of goods. Harvenick said that the seer should choose at least one good product right now, But the Lord said that these were not the products that he could show to the Coke Guild. Harvanik noticed a sudden change in the man's demeanor. What was with this arrogant attitude? Does he plan to make a deal with another guild if the deal with them falls through? That's probably true. From the Felpak Guild's perspective, there would have been plenty of other guilds willing to strike a deal with them. This was a clear example of a take-it-or-leave-it attitude. Harvanik asked Mr. Trinet not to be too upset. The guest asked when he could send the advance payment. Harvanik said that now that he had time, he thought he could send it at his own pace. Harvanik suddenly changed his mind and said he'd have it ready as soon as possible. Trinet said it didn't necessarily have to be 10 million gold, but it would be good if he sent what was ready first. This way, the man will prepare the best samples. Harvanik said he'll let him know soon. Harvanik's wife was angry. She said she didn't have that kind of money. Shouldn't her father pay the advance? Harvanik asked if they couldn't scrape together some emergency funds. The sum was quite large, after all. His wife asked if her husband knew how much she had spent to send Avalon to the academy. Harvanik then suggested asking his father-in-law. My wife asked me to stop talking nonsense. The Burano family is asking their father-in-law for 10 million gold coins. Does that even make sense? The man said, What if it works? His wife reminded him that he always says that. His wife said it was so easy to say that everything would work out this time. But what if he ended up losing his father's favor? The man said he was just as upset. His father didn't even support him, but he listened to that girl's every word. The woman asked her husband if he was talking about Aaron. He was. Felpak Guild goods are checked for authenticity, and she's working with Jeffrey on a counterfeit detector. She looked very confident. The wife paused. Why was the young gentleman interfering in business matters again? She didn't like it. She said they couldn't just let this go. They needed to seriously suppress that girl and Jeffrey. The woman meant that the two needed to be separated. The husband asked if she meant Jeff and Aaron. The young gentleman will continue to interfere, and they, too, will need to prepare. His wife offered to take the child away from Jeffrey. The girl approached Jeffrey and said she had spoken to her grandfather. He had approved of the counterfeit detector. He praised the girl and said that he was glad that the discussion went well. The man promised to bring today's treats later and asked the girl to sit down. She asked if he was interested in what she was going to do with the counterfeit detector. He said that as long as the product satisfied the girl's curiosity, it didn't matter to him. Since the girl had taken it upon herself without asking permission first, she was afraid he would be upset again. Did he really not care? Or did he truly trust her? His attitude was so difficult to understand. Jeffrey asked how the girls' classes were going. Erin said the teacher said he was still busy, so she just studied on her own. She's eager to learn what Teacher Hilberg will teach her, and she's eager for them to start classes soon. Jeff reiterated that she probably won't learn much from him. He told her to think of it as a way to rest and relax. The girl thought Jeffrey was absolutely right. The connections she makes with her students are far more important than the classes themselves. Once Hilberg returns, the students who missed independent study will also return. She needs to consider which children she should interact with. She thought she needed to keep an eye on Hilberg to see if he would cause any more trouble. Right, she still needs to keep track of how much profit they've made from the additional production of magical instruments. As soon as she finishes checking this journal today, she'll come back and… The girl yawned. She felt awkward and apologized to Jeffrey. He told her it was perfectly normal to feel sleepy at her age. The man told her to go upstairs and rest, and he would wake her up later. Children really do fall asleep at any time and in any place. She feels full of energy, ready to run around all day, but it seems like her energy drains very quickly. The girl thought that she had so much work to do, and that lying here was a waste of time. The Duke came to see Jeffrey. He said they needed to discuss something. It was important, so the Duke asked to discuss it inside. The girl was energized by her grandfather's visit, but didn't let on that she was awake. She was curious. The Duke asked where Aaron was. Jeff said the girl was sleeping. Jeffrey said that they should get down to business, as he didn't have time for idle chatter. Why was he always so rude? They were going to quarrel again. The girl decided it would be better to pretend to wake up and go downstairs. Suddenly, her grandfather's words froze her. He said he was planning to arrange for Aaron to be adopted. The Duke plans to make a formal announcement of the adoption at the annual meeting. The reason he says this: Aaron hoped it was because Jeffrey was going to become a guardian. Reborn thought Jeffrey might worry that being Aaron's parent would interfere with his duties, but he could rest assured that wouldn't happen. So he didn't come to ask Jeffrey to adopt Aaron? Jeffrey asked dryly if that was all he wanted to tell him. Jeff had already told the Duke that he would take care of Aaron himself. He just had to leave her to him, and he would take care of her. Reborn asked if he was going to leave things as they were. Aaron needed a family at this point in her life. They couldn't let her live here as a guest forever. The Duke said that if he really took care of Aaron, but Jeff interrupted him and asked who he planned to ask to adopt her. Reborn had been considering some of his collateral relatives, but if you look at someone in a straight line, then most likely it will be Harvinick. Jeffrey asked if the Duke was really considering letting Harvinick adopt her, while ordering him to take care of the child. Harvinick might not be good enough, but he was doing everything he could to lead this family. Meanwhile, the Duke said Jeff had wasted the last 2 years in this place. Jeffrey told his father that he never considered that maintaining the current situation might be the best way to protect the child, instead of giving her up for adoption to Harvinick. The Duke asked if Aaron were Viola, would he still be able to say such things? The girl remembered that a certain Viola was Jeffrey's daughter. Aaron heard that she and his wife died in an explosion several years ago. Reborn said that Jeffrey thinks he cares about Aaron, but if he really cared, he wouldn't just say he was taking responsibility. The Duke said that Jeff was simply transferring Viola to Aaron. The man yelled at his father and said that it was just his assumption. Everyone in the mansion knows that the third S.V.N. Barauno locked himself in his laboratory, clinging to the memories of his wife and daughter. Watching him waste his time searching for a non-existent culprit is exhausting enough. But it's even worse to see him playing with a child roughly the same age as Viola. The Duke said that he should not dare to use Aaron for his own satisfaction. The girl began to worry. No, this couldn't be happening. Everything she'd worked for would be in vain. Grandfather noticed some movement above, and everyone fell silent. The noise must have woken the girl. The girl asked if Grandpa had come because of the counterfeit detector. He said he was curious to see how things were going. Since the girl is already awake, why doesn't she say hello to her grandfather? Aaron noticed him sighing and asked what was wrong. Was he tired? Grandfather sat down and said nothing of the sort. He said the girl was the only one who cared about him. The man thanked the girl. The girl thought that the Duke was a very good grandfather for Aaron. Suddenly, Aaron hesitated. She asked her grandfather if she could leave the laboratory. It seemed Aaron had overheard the conversation in her sleep. The Duke had said they weren't going to send the girl away through adoption, but rather so she could stay with them longer. Reborn said that no matter who adopted the girl, she would still be able to come to the lab. But the issue isn't the lab. The issue is that the girl can't allow Harvinick to adopt her. If the girl says that Harvinick is bullying her, the girl will say it directly, then the grandfather will interrogate Harvinick. Then he will apologize, but before they hear it, kill them. Grandfather asked what was wrong. Aaron doesn't like Harvinick? The girl began to justify herself. She said it wasn't that she didn't like him. Aaron admitted that both of Harvinick's sons disliked her. Grandfather understood his granddaughter. He understood how ill-mannered these two brothers were. The grandfather suggested that the girl stay with Jeffrey. Of course, Aaron said she enjoyed being with Sir Jeffrey. He gave her treats every day and even books. The girl decided that she wouldn't tell her grandfather that Jeff had given her the plans to make money. It was not childish. What else could she say? And Jeffrey stood by her when she was treated unfairly. She put her hand on her heart and said that at the time it felt as warm as the sun. I immediately remembered the Duke's words about Jeffrey not using Aaron for his own pleasure. So, the girl likes to do research with Sir Jeff the most. Words are repaid, and that's exactly what our Aaron is like. The Duke asked the girl to trust him. He would try to find a place where she would feel most comfortable. After that, peaceful everyday life continued for a few more days. The Duke hadn't appeared since he'd started looking for a place for the girl, and Professor Hilberg hadn't returned yet. If nothing happened, the girl would worry. Suddenly, her boyfriends Eftelman and Nayux ran up to the girl. Eftelman asked what she was doing. The girl replied that she was reading. The book looked very complex. The girl said the book was about how to run a business. If Delman repeated that it sounded complicated. Nuke said that his father also read this book. Modali reread it several times. It must be good? The girl said yes. Nick said that Aaron would get along very well with his father. Modali. In her past life, the girl barely spoke to him. But he seems easy to talk to and they could really get along. If the girl gets closer to Modali, she'll become closer to Nix, which is beneficial. The girl voiced her thoughts out loud, told Nix, and the boy was delighted. Nuke seemed to be in a good mood. Eftelman asked if he should read the book too. Nyuk said that Eftelman shouldn't force himself to read the book. It would look like Eftelman knew nothing. A silhouette watched the boys, and at the end, it came out and addressed Aaron. The girl ran to her grandfather. He asked if Aaron was leaving the lab. The girl said yes. She had been at the academy and then stopped by the lab. Grandfather said she was working hard to help Jeffrey. Aaron said it wasn't hard. There was a lot to learn from Sir Jeffrey, since the annual meeting is just around the corner, and he's too busy to invite the girl. Does that mean he's going to tell her about adoption? But the grandfather said that he wanted to give the girl a small gift. So it's not about adoption. Lately, the girl has been helping her grandfather a lot. Running the lab benefits only Jeffrey, and he wants to give her what she wants. Aaron thought that saying she wanted Jeffrey to adopt her might sound ridiculous and pushy. If the girl asked for jewelry or jewels, they might come in handy someday, but they wouldn't help win the Duke's favor. In the end, the girl asked him for a certificate for the fulfillment of a wish. He asked what she meant. She explained that he would grant her one wish whenever she wished it. So the girl couldn't come up with anything. Grandfather said he was eager to see what she wished for. If it wasn't dangerous, he would grant it. Aaron said the Duke was the best. The butler has arrived. The task he assigned is complete. Should he ask the guests to wait? The Duke stepped away, leaving Aaron alone. She noticed a profit report for the Chadwick diamond mine on the table. It was the account book for a bankrupt mine controlled by Harvenick. Apparently, they had altered the figures to make the mine's profits look good. Although Harvenick has already sent an advance payment to TrueNet, isn't this something that can be stopped now? If she points out the discrepancies in the ledger, could she use that to prevent Harvenick's from adopting her? It was a diamond mine that Harvenick hastily acquired to cover a business deficit, but it produced neither diamonds nor coal, and ultimately became one of the businesses that suffered enormous losses. Ultimately, Harvenick, who had seen nothing but losses all year, decided to falsify the books to avoid being exposed by Orphan. Her first task was to get to grips with this primitive account book. Of course, in that life, Harvenick advised her to simply ignore it. At the time, the girl believed she'd be fired if anything went wrong, so she desperately falsified records. Harvenick probably knew that Orphan was too busy with the annual meeting and planned to get away with it during this time. Harvenick's prosecution was scheduled to take place after the annual meeting, so proper punishment would not have followed. The girl needs to find hard evidence before the annual meeting to make sure everyone present at the meeting knows that Harvenick is unfit to be a parent. To do this, she needs to find a real account book, not a fake one. But where the hell will she find this book? Exactly! A secret ledger. A secret ledger is a book that records the inflow and outflow of money or goods. This is the book that Harvenick wrote and kept personally, if she can present it to the Duke. No, I am at the annual meeting. Suddenly, Grandfather and his butler appeared in the office. The Duke offered the girl something to eat and invited her to dinner. The girl accepted. Aaron said she would return to her room. The Duke said it was a great idea, but there was one but. The grandfather invited the girl to have dinner with him. If she didn't mind, of course. The girl was very surprised at the opportunity to dine with Duke Orphan. Aaron agreed. The Duke led her into the dining hall, and she was amazed by his beauty. Harvenick and his wife were there. They were the first to enter the hall. Harvenick's wife said it was unusual for the Duke to invite them to dinner, so they decided to arrive early. The woman thought the Duke would come alone, but Aaron was there too. He said the girl was simply with him, and he felt awkward sending her out to eat alone. The woman suggested calling Avalon and Bamel, since they had not yet had dinner. Orphan rejected the idea. He had urgent business to discuss today, so they would call them another time. As expected, the Duke is still considering adoption with Harvenick. Otherwise, he wouldn't have invited him to dinner like that. The girl thought this was bad. She didn't have a fully prepared plan yet. Suddenly, Jeffrey arrived. Harvanek said his brother seemed unconcerned, considering he was the last one to arrive. Harvanek asked why he had come only now when he had been called long ago. Jeffrey told his brother not to worry. If the assistant hadn't come, he wouldn't have come either. The Duke asked why his sons quarreled every time they met. The girl was pleased to think that Jeff had come for her. The table looked magical. The head of the family suggested eating before it got cold. The girl was so nervous that she refused to eat. If she picked at her food, the Duke wouldn't like it. Jeffrey noticed this and handed her the dish. He said it was perhaps the most edible thing there was. The girl tried the dish that Jeffrey served her and was surprised by its wonderful taste. The Duke asked his eldest son how things were going with the Felpack Guild. They were producing high-quality samples. They had given them a smaller advance than they had requested. The Duke was surprised that they had already paid the advance. Harvanek said there are many guilds willing to trade. After a slight hesitation, Harvanek said he planned to launch the research institute they'd discussed. The staff was in place. The equipment had been purchased, so they could begin work soon. Father said he believed the creation of a research institute was premature. Harvanek countered, believing that now was the perfect time. Harvanek also added that they could take Aaron to the institute as a student. He heard that the girl was currently working on simple calculations under Jeffrey's guidance. Commercializing Jeffrey's projects and the institute's existence would allow for the rapid establishment of direct production. Furthermore, it would be useful for the girl to study general economics and management there. He plans to exploit Jeffrey's projects for his own gain and, at the same time, take Aaron along with him. That's why Harvanek thinks it's a good idea to open the institute soon. The Duke said that before that, they need to sort out the child's accommodations. Harvanek asked if the father was considering adoption. He said he planned to find adoptive parents at this year's annual meeting. The Duke added that he would like it to be Harvanek, and his wife became candidates to become her parents. Harvanek's wife asked what he meant by candidates for the role of parents. Does he mean that anyone else is being considered? Gretzog said that one family from each direct and collateral line would be recommended. However, if Aaron is sent to the sideline, she will not be able to reside in the Duke's castle. Therefore, Raphael would prefer that the Harvanek family, as a direct line, adopt Aaron. Harvanek said it was a great honor for them, and his wife added that they could not refuse such a blessing. The Duke had said he would choose the place where the girl would be most comfortable. Aaron thought that if it came to that, she might have to use her wish to refuse. The Duke also said he planned to recommend the Modali family as a sideline. All eyes turned to him. He was a key member of their merchant guild and deeply trusted. The Duke thought he would be a reliable choice. The grandfather added that the whole family reacted positively to Aaron's adoption. Moreover, Modali's son is about the same age as the girl, and he seems happy about Aaron's arrival. With his family, naturally, Harvanek was angry when he learned about the competitor. The woman asked if there was any special reason for inviting candidates and making the adoption decision at the annual meeting. She added that the Duke also wanted the adoption to be direct. Wouldn't it be better to grant Aaron's adoption to the Harvanek family and do it quickly? Wouldn't it be better for the young master in the research areas if they took Aaron away sooner? The Duke said he'd never seen Jeffrey involved in family matters. How could he be expected to have the right opinion? Harvanek and his wife already have 2 children, so they must have a lot on their plate. Considering all this, he wants to give both parties time to think. The grandfather turned to the girl and told her to think about this for now. The rest will be discussed at the annual meeting. The Duke's alternative is Modali. If the girl transfers to the Modali family, she'll have a great ally like Nyx, which is good, but Modali's constant arguments with Harvanek. This means that the girl will be completely at odds with Harvanek. But given Modali's significant contribution to the current Coke Merchant Guild, the Duke seemed to offer a rather non-creeping alternative. Modali is a responsible and firm leader, and most likely, he is also a good father. But did Jeffrey decide to stay away from it? But now is not the time to despair. Aaron's goal isn't to be adopted by Jeffrey, but to escape Harvanek. Therefore, the plan to be adopted by Jeffrey must be abandoned. Although no, if we think about it more broadly, isn't it time to look at the big picture? Now the girl has Plan C, adopting Modali. Nothing has been decided yet. The poor relationship between Modali and Harvinick is a double-edged sword. Jeff hasn't yet decided on his position either. Moreover, the Duke's heart still seems to be leaning toward Harvinick. Aaron must make careful preparations to ensure the Duke won't be able to resort to Plan A, adopting Harvinick, at all. So, in any case, Plan B, adopting Jeffrey, will have to be put on hold for now. Starting tomorrow, the girl will work hard to find the secret account book. Since the girl has no other choice, it's time to sleep now. Aaron thought about the secret book. She definitely received it at some point in her past life. What did Harvinick tell her then? Her thoughts began to fill with memories. She recalled her conversation with Harvinick. Would Harvinick leave something so important here? It would be disastrous if someone stole it. Harvinick said he needed to go to the training center soon, so he asked the girl to follow him. He said the man would definitely have the book. The girl blew herself up. Training center! True. She didn't see who it was then, but the person who gave Harvinick the secret book was at the training center. Someone who had worked there for a long time. Perhaps the secret account book is with Hilberg? Hilberg stood at the board. He asked the children if they understood the material. Everyone answered yes. Hilberg told everyone to turn to the next page. Niux turned to Fidelman. He asked if his friend had offended him in some way. Aaron? But Nix's guesses turned out to be wrong. So why does Aaron look so upset? Eftelman wanted to know why too. The book was nowhere to be found. She searched for it during breaks, avoiding Harvinick's gaze. But she couldn't find anything. A book made of expensive, high-quality leather should stand out. So where can it be? Maybe they placed it somewhere else, not in the Duke's castle? No. The annual meeting was coming up soon, and if she were the keeper of the book, she wouldn't want to leave the ledger she'd need outside the castle. There's also a chance she was mistaken. If so, the girl will have to reconsider her conclusions. It's still early, so it could happen before Harvinick hands over the ledger to Hilberg. Aaron shouldn't jump to conclusions. It would be nice if the account book was simply kept quietly in Harvinick's office. Harvinick was smashing everything in his office, apparently searching for a secret book. Who dared to target him and pull off this brazen trick? But whoever it is, he will kill them when he finds them. Alfana was at her desk and noticed a book on the table. That very book. What was it doing there? She didn't remember seeing it when she brought in new books. It had no title or author, not even a classification tag. Who, pray tell, brought such a book? Having opened it and read a couple of lines, the girl realized that this was not a simple book, but a handwritten account book. Advance payment, contract fee. Is this an account book kept by a family member? In the end, the girl was never able to find the secret account book. Just in case, she checked with other academy staff. But it was clear that only teachers attended the academy. So, Hilberg was the one who had been there the longest. Then, most likely, the account book is with Hilberg. Without any information, it's difficult to know what exactly to look for. Mari knocked on the girl's door. Aaron let her in. Suddenly, the maid said, "Come in, everyone," and the girl turned around. 3 unfamiliar ladies stood before her. The large maid greeted the girl and introduced herself. Her name was Lisa. The snow-white girl was named Ash. The dark-haired maid was named Sarah. Everyone was amazed at the girl's beauty. Aaron asked Marie who these people were. The maid said they were the maids who would serve Aaron. The Duke had hired them. Why send so many people to care for one little girl? Marie said the annual meeting would be incredibly busy, so she felt relieved. Aaron said it was nice to meet him and immediately asked him to take care of her. Since they were done with their introductions, the girl ordered them to go about their business. The girl wanted to be alone. Ash said they were her personal maids, and their job was to take care of Aaron. But the young lady said she didn't need anything. Marie noticed that the young miss had been in her room since she returned from the academy in the morning. She said that the weather was wonderful outside and invited the girl to go for a walk with the maids. The new maids supported the idea. It turned out that Yesh makes wonderful flower crowns. The girl thought that she should make plans, not play hide-and-seek or weave rings from flowers. Apparently, they'd never leave until Aaron agreed. The girl said she'd return the book to the library, and the maids, of course, wanted to go with her. But Aaron flew out of the room and said that she would be back soon. Lisa wondered if they should follow her. Sarah said no. The young lady seemed uncomfortable with them. If they were too pushy at the first meeting, she might feel doomed. She should leave her alone. Marie added that Miss hadn't spoken to anyone, even while in the castle. She only recently began interacting with her peers, but it seems she still locks herself in her room reading books. Aaron would likely have sent them away. That's why their role is so important. Marie asked them to try to fulfill everything the young lady asked, no matter what. The girl looked around, hoping that no one was following her. Now that Aaron is already in the library, there's some planning to do. The girl met Alfana. The woman asked if Miss was looking for a book, but she had come there simply to read. Alfana said she'd be at the table. She asked me to let her know if she needed anything. As soon as Alfana turned away, Aaron noticed that very book in her hands. Why was the librarian holding an account book? A few minutes before Aaron arrived, Alfana was examining a book. Spend millions of gold coins up front to the Information Guild for information on the new continent's plant collection, even though the plants on the new continent are quite rare. 3.24 million gold is simply absurd. Alfana thought the amount paid to the Information Guild was ridiculous. Could this really be considered generosity? These items also cost over 3 million gold each. It even says processed here, unlike the others. What kind of commission is this for an item that hasn't been specified? It's insane. Suddenly, young Miss Aaron arrived at the library, and then a conversation ensued. Alfana walked to her workstation, put down her book, and hoped that her communication and behavior had not looked ridiculous. Alfana simply took the book because she was surprised. When the young lady left, she was to return the book to its original place. The girl approached Alfana and asked what kind of red leather book it was. Aaron said the cover looked beautiful and asked her to take it to read. The librarian said there was no library card for this book, so it would be a bit difficult. Besides, it's not a children's book. The young lady said she would read another one then. It was as if a weight had been lifted from Alfana's heart. The girl noticed the woman had hidden the book in her desk drawer. Seeing how suspicious she was of the book, it definitely looked like a secret ledger. Aaron couldn't believe that Alfana had Harvanik's account book. Now that the girl thought about it, Alfana often went to the educational center on errands for Hilberg. The librarian really is the ideal worker for Harvanik. The girl felt as if someone had come up to her and hit her on the back of the head. She had a good feeling about Alfana. Hilberg came to the library. He said he needed help. He needed a woman to come out and help him with some work. Alfana asked what he meant. The man said she would understand when she got out. There should be a carriage parked in front of the library building. The man left. The girl watched him and eavesdropped on their conversation, so she had to work hard to avoid being seen by the teacher. Hilberg immediately headed to the bookshelves. He arrived at a specific spot and began searching for a book, but he didn't find anything he needed there. The girl watched as the teacher nervously searched for the book. Aaron decided to show herself. She walked up to Hilberg and said hello. The excitement on his face instantly redoubled. The girl asked if the man was looking for a book. He said yes. Aaron advised him to contact Alfana. Maybe she should bring Alfana here quickly? The man said there was no need. Hilberg said it seemed like the librarian didn't know, so it would be a waste of effort. Aaron objected. There couldn't be a book in the library that Alfana didn't know about. The man said that was true, but he seemed a little confused. The teacher said he'd be back at the academy for a while until the librarian returned. He hoped the girl would also enjoy the interesting reading. He says Alfana doesn't know? That's more than suspicious. There's something odd about it. Being careful enough to send the librarian outside, but not being able to find something that no one was supposed to take. Doesn't that mean that what he hid is gone? It looked like the teacher was looking for something to hide in the library. Book would be the perfect choice for this, especially considering it's a private library, so strictly controlled by Barauno. The Barauno Library has a very strict structure where only direct descendants or certified individuals can enter. In the girl's past life as a secretary, it took her a whole year to finally get an access card. Even then, she had to get permission from the librarian every time she wanted to enter. Thus, few people are willing to visit the library. The only direct descendant who visits the library is Jeffrey. So, to commit the perfect crime, it is enough to simply hide the book where Jeffrey will not find it. The girl finally found the book she needed, even though she had been searching the learning center all day. She couldn't believe Hilberg had hidden the ledger in the library. If it hadn't been for Alphana, it might have been perfectly hidden. But Alphana might have suspected something was wrong. I wonder why she even took the ledger. Judging by her reaction, it doesn't seem like she knew what it contained. There are so many possibilities. It's difficult to pinpoint the exact cause. Besides, Alphana is a librarian, whom she never saw in her past life. The librarian she dated after she finished her probation and gained access to the library. He had nothing to do with Alphana, right? Alphana is a fairly intelligent and capable librarian, chosen by the Barano family. So, she wouldn't just leave a position where she could earn a comfortable living. And the Barano family isn't doing any business either, so they won't be looking for a new librarian. But just think, they replaced that librarian without any fuss or rumors. Perhaps there was some problem with that book that led to them firing the librarian. Then it would make sense. On the contrary, Hilberg remained in the mansion until the Bay Melter Avalon entered the academy. At least the incident didn't harm Hilberg. It's entirely possible that in her past life, Alphana either tried to extract something from the ledger, but failed, leading to her dismissal, or she learned the contents of the ledger and was dealt with by Harvinick. Lisa finished the young lady's hair and said that now she could go to bed peacefully. She praised the magic tool and said that it was very useful. Lisa couldn't believe he dried his wet hair so quickly. Aaron said it was invented by Sir Geoffrey, who was looking after her. Lisa clearly had a negative attitude towards the young master. She said that she'd better handle the tool carefully then, as if she accidentally broke it. It could kill her. Aaron reassured the maid. The girl said that Sir Geoffrey may look scary, but he has a kind side. He treats Aaron to homemade treats every day, after all. Lisa was surprised that the young master did this. Aaron asked Lisa to leave, as she was going to bed. The maid said she couldn't leave the young lady alone and would stay with her until she fell asleep. From now on, they must be planning to take turns keeping an eye on the girl, so she won't be able to move around alone at night. That's a bit inconvenient. Can she proceed with her plan? The girl decided to ask Lisa for a favor, to go to the library with her. Lisa asked if Aaron had found the book she wanted. The girl said yes. The maid asked if the young lady needed any more books. Aaron paused. The girl asked to get the blue book from the very top shelf, which Miss could not reach. The book ended up on the second floor. Lisa went to get a stepladder. Given Alphana's behavior today, it is highly likely that she discovered the account book for the first time today. Since Aaron had shown interest in the book, it would be difficult for her to return it. But she would never have been able to take it home anyway, the girl thought. If she were Alphonse, she would have thought it safest to leave the secret ledger under the table. The girl found it. Opening it, Aaron realized it was definitely Harvanick's ledger, and the girl decided that she would hide it among the other books. The girl exhaled. The mission had been successfully accomplished. No matter how hard Harvanick tried, he was now in her hands. But the celebration was interrupted by Lisa. She was looking for the young lady. The girl went out to her maid, and she was very happy that she had found her mistress. Lisa handed her the blue book and asked if it was the one the girl was looking for. She confirmed it. The maid asked if the girl was also going to read the books she was holding in her hands. The girl said they were important, so yes. Lisa guessed the books were pretty heavy and offered to help carry them. The young lady obediently handed the books to the maid and asked her to return to the room. Lisa asked Aaron if she liked reading books. The girl replied that of course she did. Lisa said that was truly commendable. Aaron asked if it was difficult for a girl to read books. It turned out the maid was illiterate and couldn't read at all. Because of this, she was fired from her job at the library. Previously, she had been cleaning the library. At the time, Lisa was considering self-study while working there, but there weren't any suitable books available. Eventually, the girl couldn't read her own name, so she was fired. Aaron offered to teach Lisa to read. If the girl memorizes a few letters, she'll be able to easily write her name. After that, Aaron will find books for Lisa to read. The maid said the young lady sounded like an older sister. That is, like a teacher. Lisa was pleased that the girl was willing to teach her without treating her like a dumbass. The maid asked if the young lady intended to become a teacher, or perhaps she aspired to become a brilliant researcher like Sir Geoffrey. But Aaron said that when she grows up, she wants to become a merchant in a large trading company, just like her grandfather. The young girl's goal is to become so rich that she won't have to work for the rest of her life. Liza said that to do that, she had to study hard. The maid thought about it. People say the girl is shy, but that's not true at all. But instead, the young miss must spend time with the maids whenever possible. Erin agreed. Ash entered the room and wanted to wake up her mistress, but the girl had already woken up. The young lady said she felt great today. Ash asked if anything good had happened this morning. Well, having amazing weapons in your hands is definitely something good. Ash asked how the library exploration had gone the previous night. Erin replied that it had been fun. The maid suggested that it would be great if Miss could sleep through the night. The girl agreed. Erin had already decided to go to the academy, but the maid asked her to wait. Ash said she would accompany the girl. The girl was surprised. For several days, the maids would accompany her there and back. For several days, the annex will be as busy as the main building, with many people coming and going. Relatives visiting from afar would be staying in the annex. The girl assumed it was because of the annual gathering. Can the girl imagine that she will be alone in this crowd? Erin, I finally decided to walk through the crowd with the maid. Now they're truly close to the annual meeting. The Burano family's events were simply a huge workload for the secretary. Before, it was something that had nothing to do with her. Now that the girl has become such a part of the family, it feels different. Of course, in her past life and now, it has always been a battle for the girl. Ash asked if she should pick up the girl after the academy. Erin replied that she shouldn't. After the academy, the girl will go to Jeffrey's lab, pretend she doesn't know anything for now, and give the book to Jeffrey today. She asked what Lord Jeffrey meant. Last night, the man was sitting at his desk, thinking as usual. All set. This is just a temporary solution, but it is enough to call it a counterfeit goods detector. No matter how small the task, he always feels satisfaction when he completes it. But not this time. Maybe it's because of that incident during dinner. This clever child froze at the mention of Harvinick's name, and yet they gave her up for adoption without any concerns. Father truly knows nothing about Erin. The fact that he chose this idiot as a candidate for parenthood means he wants to raise Erin under his influence. But even with such firm resolve, he prepared an alternative. For Erin, who feels uncomfortable around Harvinick's sons, once he makes a decision, he never deviates from the chosen path. So the father takes care of Erin in his own way. And of all the branches, he specifically chose Modali. Does Erin's father plan to raise her as a businesswoman? Since the girl is very smart, she'll handle any task given to her well. However, if Jeff were in his shoes, he wouldn't have defined Erin's career path so clearly. Considering her abilities, it would be better if the girl gradually established herself as a mage scientist. Until now, his only interest had been magical science. For a long time, family matters weren't particularly important to him. He's not interested in power struggles. Ever since Jeff lost his wife, he'd considered family matters none of his business. However, he always remembered his father's words when he told him not to use Erin for his own satisfaction. The man heard voices. Who else was in the library at this hour? Jeffrey heard Erin's voice, saying that when she grew up, she wanted to be like her grandfather. He remembered the girl's words that she was also going to turn all the other drawings into products. Jeffrey remembered his words again. Father really didn't know anything about Erin. If he were in his place. But was it really he who didn't really know this little girl? The girl asked again what Lord Jeffrey meant. He said that the girl should not come to the laboratory anymore. She didn't understand why the young master had brought this up. From now on, the girl could use this time for other things. Now she can play outside, go to the library, and spend time with the kids at the academy. Erin didn't want this. What was this bolt from the blue that fell on the girl? She asked why. It meant she was no longer his assistant. He replied that if she wanted to stop being his assistant, she could do so. How can he just dump this on her out of nowhere? What about the girl? What about her plans? The girl started denying it. She didn't want this. The man said he wasn't going to drive Erin away. He only said that the girl shouldn't do it anymore. But the young lady doesn't like being idle. She asked if the girl could continue doing what she had been doing before. Jeffrey said that staying here would make it difficult for her to figure out what she really wanted. If you think about it, the young gentleman never asked the girl what she wanted. The girl declared that she wanted to study magical science. Jeff didn't believe her and said there was no need for such a lie. The Lord asked if the girl hadn't said that. When she grew up, she wanted to become a merchant like her grandfather. Jeffrey admitted that he had accidentally overheard Aaron's conversation with the maid in the library. The father was right. His greed blinded him to what the girl really wanted. When it comes to business, he can't help her much or teach her much. Jeff only understands the science of magic. So Jeffrey told her not to waste her time here. Let him go and learn trade from his grandfather if he wishes. The man thanked her for helping him all this time and handed her some kind of scroll. Jeffrey believed that wherever she went and whatever she did, she would definitely succeed. Aaron asked if she was really of no use to the Lord. The man was surprised. He asked where the girl had gotten such a terrible idea. The girl said that she wanted to become a merchant, but she wanted to learn magical science from him no less. Can't she do both? Help the young master and continue to engage in trade? Jeffrey said that she could always study magical science, even as his assistant. Regardless of which house the girl is accepted into, there will always be a teacher who can teach her the science of magic. Aaron couldn't resist and even shouted a little, declaring that she liked Mr. Jeffrey. He was surprised. Hadn't they just been talking about her studies? Why this all of a sudden? Unable to bear her own embarrassment, she ran out of the lab, leaving Jeffrey alone with his thoughts. He was so willful when he first offered her to become his assistant. But now, he decides everything on his own and leaves. If he stopped liking Aaron, she would understand it. But to act so indifferently was too much. The girl recalled his words about not asking what she wanted. She remembered how he asked her not to waste her time here. Aaron rushed back to her room. She noticed that the scroll Jeff had given her was a blueprint for a counterfeit detector. In any case, she'd done what she could. The girl decided to destroy Harvinick herself. At that moment, Alphana discovered the book was missing. She thought bringing it home would be dangerous, and there was a risk of getting caught. So she left it on the table. But now it's gone! What should she do? Maybe it's for the best. After all, this book isn't even from the library. Perhaps not knowing where this book isn't such a big deal. Aaron approached the librarian. The girl took out something from under the hem of her dress and asked if Alphana knew what it was. It turned out the girl had pulled out a fragment from a page of a secret ledger. She asked why Aaron had it. She hoped it wasn't the young lady who took the ledger from the table. From the moment the girl picked up the account book, there was no longer any opportunity to act like a normal child. Aaron decided it was time to clarify this conversation, so she confirmed that she had picked up the book from the table. Alphana asked why the little girl needed it. As she left, the young lady said she did. Aaron asked if the librarian knew whose ledger it was. Alphana shook her head and said no. The girl leafed through it, wondering what kind of book it was. But even after reading the contents, there was nothing that would allow her to identify the owner. But if so, how did the librarian know whose it was? The girl began to explain how she found out about it. Well, it doesn't really matter to Alphon, does it? What's more important is what to do with this ledger, right? Alphana agreed. Aaron revealed that this ledger is actually a repository of Lord Harvinick's secrets. The young lady said that she was going to show this book to her grandfather, the head of the family. Aaron doesn't think she'll get much use out of it if she keeps the book for herself. It's best to hand her over to Duke Raphiron before another adult takes her. If the account book fell into the hands of the head of the family, they would certainly find out that she had been negligent in ensuring the security of this library. But then the girl thought of Alphone. The girl was worried that her grandfather might scold Alphana for this book, so she simply popped into the library for a minute. Alphana swore that she had not hidden this account book anywhere. The girl claimed that she found it by accident, but didn't know what to do with it. Alphana has a younger brother to care for. If she's fired from here, her family will be left penniless on the streets. It seems Aaron has frightened her enough, so it's time to start testing the waters. Who is the person who told Lord Harvinick the girl's story? During their last meal, the man somehow knew all about what she had done as Lord Geoffrey's assistant. Lord Geoffrey is not the type to discuss the girl with his family, so we can rule him out. If someone in the library knows what she's doing with Lord Geoffrey, then it has to be someone like Alphana, someone who works in this place and frequents the lab. The librarian doesn't deny it, so the girl must be completely right. If Alphana really is a spy for Harvinick, then digging even deeper could cost the girl her life. But this time, Aaron wants to test her ability to judge people. She said she'd been watching Alphana for a while. Aaron thought the girl wanted to steal the magazine. but she hadn't taken it yet. That means something's holding the librarian back, right? If Erin's not mistaken, the girl's still hesitant. Alfana asked what Miss wanted from her. Erin said that during the annual meeting, when presenting the library report, the girl should also open the Harvanic account book. The librarian was surprised. It had to be that way, because she was the one who discovered the ledger in the library. Then wouldn't it be better to report this directly to the head of the family? Why is Erin trying to make things worse in front of everyone? Erin's reluctance to be Harvanic's daughter. She had originally intended to ask Lord Geoffrey for this, but it didn't work out, so now the girl asks for Alfana. Could she just pretend that they accidentally found something that someone had dropped? Alfana, without thinking twice, she agreed to this adventure, thereby surprising the girl. But Erin had one more request. They were already in the same boat, so she wouldn't force the girl to do anything dangerous. Alfana and Hilberg met in the garden. The man asked why she had invited him to such a place. The librarian greeted me politely. She said it was nothing special. While the young miss was hiding in the bushes, Alfana said that she had something to tell the teacher. Not long before, Alfana, with a tremor running through her body, had asked the young lady if she was sure this plan would work. Erin was sure of it. Erin tried to somehow encourage the librarian. Meanwhile, she was wondering how she had managed to end up in this situation. The librarian said she'd heard something just recently. Hilberg asked again. Alfana said she heard a man looking for a certain book. She was holding an account book behind her back. The girl pulled a book from behind her back and showed it to the teacher, asking if it was the right one. Seeing the confusion on the man's face, she determined that it was indeed the right one. From what Alfana saw, this was a very unusual book. So why was the teacher looking for it? What are his plans for this book? The librarian intends to announce it at the annual meeting. Since this was a book the girl found in the library, she couldn't just leave it behind. Hilberg asked her to give it to him, since that was the case. He said that he knew the owner of the book, who was going crazy, so he would give it to him. The girl let it slip that she knew the owner. The teacher asked if she knew him and had checked him out. The man realized that absolutely everything is finite for him. The girl asked again. He repeated that he had told her to do with the book as she pleased. He would tell the headmaster that she had nothing to do with it. Alfana asked how he could be so sure that the girl had nothing to do with it. It would have been pointless to obey the order. The man admitted that, ultimately, he was the one who stole her. The maid told her that the teacher's father was a notorious gambler, even in this area. He declared he would stop gambling, regretting that he had lost his home to debt. But in his old age, he began gambling again and squandering his fortune. Eventually, due to the fact that his elderly father could hardly move, he stopped visiting the gambling halls, and the accumulated debts were barely covered by Hilberg's salary. The girl told him after he left that if it was true that he had stolen her, then asking for forgiveness wouldn't be enough. At worst, he could die. But he said that maybe it would be better this way. Having finished, the man walked away into the distance without turning around. Alfana exhaled. She thought her heart was about to jump out of her chest. Erin praised her. The girl had done well indeed. The girl asked the librarian for her opinion. Alfana said that at least it looked like she wouldn't have to deal with Harvanik anymore. The girl explained that she simply liked smart people. Alfana really is smart. Well, it seems like a librarian is easy to push around, here and there. In any case, the girl shouldn't worry. This time, the young lady won't let her be a pawn. The girl asked Alfana to make sure that she prepared for the presentation thoroughly and flawlessly.